Let's bow our heads and pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. In your name we pray.
Amen.
Amen. Commissioner Marquetti.
Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Leyland. Commissioner Lawrence.
Here.
Commissioner Locke. Here. Chair Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Howie. Here. Commissioner Barrera.
Present.
Commissioner Marquetti. Here. And Commissioner Lee.
Here. All right, all are present. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. Before I open the floor up for public comment, we're only going to go for 3 minutes. And if you have anything after that, then, well, I'll stop you and I'll make sure and see if the board don't have any objections. But I like to keep it cordial both ways, going back and forth. We're not going to interact with the public during your questions and all that, because that would be, dangerous. So we don't do that here. All right, with all that said, the floor is now open.
Hello, my name is Lynn Chance. I was going to ask this time, because the last time I spoke about Market Van Buren, I was going to ask exactly how much money is Market Van Buren bringing, and then how much money is our employees bringing in on the grants that they are writing. I have since found out that Market Van Buren is not bringing any money in. The only thing Market Van Buren did was give our employees the template to write the grants, and then they tell our employees and our administration which grants to go after. So therefore, our employees who are taking all of this time out to write all of these grants, they're the ones that needs to be getting credit for all these grants that are coming in, not Market Van Buren. And another thing is, I don't understand why we have to pay 6 figures a year to Market Van Buren when our employees are doing most of the work. So that's about all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. I forgot to set my obnoxious alarm. Dang it. Anybody else? Yes, sir. I can't put my obnoxious alarm on for you, man.
You might want to, Gerald.
Oh, boy. I've been warned.
I'm here tonight. I haven't seen an agenda, but I hear there's a question on it about providing EMS for townships in the county. And I'm here to just let the commissioners know, because I'm not sure, I know some of the commissioners know, that some of the townships have service, and we're very well satisfied with that service. I'm a Mason Township trustee, and I'm on the board of directors for Southeast Public Safety Authority, i.e., that's the authority, that's the service that we're very well satisfied with. We have no problems. And what I'm trying to say is there are other options other than the county to get involved. In 2007, SEPSA was formed by Mason and Porter, went together and formed the authority. The millage was passed, and every year since, or not every year, but every election cycle since, the millage passes by a larger margin, which shows me that the township residents see value, great value in the service. It just, everyone appreciates it. To that end, we have advanced life support, and for those that don't know what that is, that's paramedics that can administer drugs, just like the big cities. I mean, we want for nothing out there. That being said, the paramedics, everyone we have on staff is part-time. So they get part-time pay, they get no benefits, no insurance, and none of these huge pensions that come with full-time, which I'm very much afraid that the county would want to push for a full-time department. And that's going to be very costly to the residents they serve when it can be done more economically. It can be done because we're doing it. We've done it for 17 years, and it's worked very well. That being said as well, it makes sense to partner with a neighboring township, and that's how we do it. No township can do it by themselves, or at least we can't. Porter or Mason, neither one, could do this by themselves, but by partnering, we can, and we have partnered on a couple of different projects besides this, that it helps. When you get that partner relationship going, you can work back and forth, and you can save some money using another township to help you, and you're helping them at the same time. I just want to say it can be done, because we've done it for 17 years. Everyone seems to be very happy with it. Response times on these are very much in line with the professional departments. So it's not like we're getting there 30 minutes later. You know, we get there in about the same amount of time. We're averaging two runs a day, and that's pretty much par for the course for these small departments. But that's 2 runs a day. All right, thanks, Jeremiah. I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. Thank you.
John, what was his name again?
Charlie. Yes, sir. Come on up, please.
Hi, I'm John Brandt, the Mason Township Supervisor, and I'm just here to back up Charlie on this. Charlie is our guy for the fire department, and he's correct. You know, you can't do it by yourself, although we do take the time to look into the fire department. They're running very efficient. We try to update them with new equipment, which we've done this past year. We've used some of the ARPA money for that. And we've also given them, well, actually some Jaws of Life, battery operated, because what they were working with was old. So we try to keep them updated, and it can be done, but it's not cheap. And we really enjoy the service we have and don't want to change in Mason Township, and I'm sure Porter feels the same way. And I agree with Charlie that there is other ways if people need the fire department, they should team up, and maybe if they want to come and model after Mason and Porter Township, I'm sure that they would get some actual great advice from those people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? All right, the floor is closed for public comment. Thank you. For number 6, we do have an addition to the agenda, and I'm going to use my chair authorities to include Danielle Persky. She has a presentation, and she'll be under, on item C, under presentations. And she has promised us that she will keep it under 10 minutes. So with that said, anybody else has any other additions or deletions? We'll move on to number 7.
And I make a motion to approve the Cass County Board of Commissioners Committee of the Whole for October 19th, 2023 as amended. Did we amend it or just?
No, it's just my addition.
Just addition.
Yeah,
I second that.
thank you. Have motion on the floor and support. We have any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the September 21st, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes.
Second.
All right. I was wondering there for a second, like, come on, man. We have a motion on the floor and support. Is there any discussion on it? It should be pretty self-explanatory. We were all there. All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Where are we at? Presentations. The medical examiner isn't here yet, so we're going to go with John Rudell. Yep. Come on up, sir.
Good evening, everybody. My name is John Riddell, Executive Director for Woodlands Behavioral Health. I have been so for about 5 months now. A little bit about me. Graduate of CMU, Bachelor's and Master's. CPA for 30-plus years, chief financial officer, and sometime interim superintendent for K-12 schools throughout the state of Michigan for 30 years. What I want to do here is give you a little highlight of Woodlands over the past year, and give a little time at the end for Q&A. Mission statement. Woodlands provides impactful behavioral health utilizing respectful, inclusive, positive approach. That's our team. You see the board on the left, leadership team on the right. These are our core consumers. These are the people that we see on a day-to-day basis. Some of the definitions and acronyms: severe and persistent mental illness, intellectual and developmentally disabled, substance use disorder, and crisis. Mobile crisis team and intake. Some of our recent successes, the mobile crisis team, I'm sure people can attest, especially the emergency responders can attest to that team and how well they've done. Woodlands has been CARF accredited for years, and we've just renewed to 2025. Our recipient rights audit has been passed. Our SWMBA audit has been passed. Currently, we rank 4th of the 8 CMHs in the region in terms of how they rate us. Quality plan, our path to improved care, was just approved by the board and submitted. Compliance plan, we perform internal audits to ensure that we comply with all the standards for community mental health systems. Financial, the state came up with a new reporting standard cost allocation that we've complied with, and we've had good communication with SWMBA and Cass County over the past year or so. Client trends. This is what's happened to us in terms of who's been coming through our doors in the last 6 years. Well, 5 plus an estimated for this year. And you can see where the pandemic kind of plays an effect. Medicaid settlement. So what happens is, as a capitated system, they give us a pot of money, and either we've not spent it all to take care of our clients, consumers, or we've spent more than they've allotted us. So the previous 4, we settled money back to SWMBA to our regional entity. This year, it's the other way. SWMBA will send us money. We have spent more to take care of our clients than we've received. And it's estimated the same for next fiscal year. County sends us an appropriation, $114,000. It was $195,000 in 2019, and that's what we're spending it on. It's statutory and mandatory expenditures. PA 166, we have to send a chunk up to the regional entity, to SWMBA. Anybody from the county that's hospitalized, inpatient, in any of the state hospitals, we have to pay 10%. That's what that cost has been. And in 2021, you can see, again, there's a pandemic pop that you can see. And then to receive our state general funds, we have to, again, allocate some of our local funds to receive those from the state. Overall, this is what our budget looks like. $22 million, we get $20 million in Medicaid, we get $1 million from the state in GF funds. We have some grants. You see Cass County's appropriation and what we collect locally from client fees, third-party insurance, or any miscellaneous revenue that we get. On the expense side, here's where we spend it. Direct services for our clinicians, our clients, mobile crisis, case management, the medical clinic, the nurses and the doctors that we have. Contracted services, so the inpatient, community living services, specialized res, and then building costs. That, I'm looking for one more slide. Anyway, the last slide has got upcoming opportunities for us. I know the commissioners have it in their packet.
Yeah,
Um,
we do.
The one big thing is Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic, okay? So that's a new wave that's kind of sweeping the state. 6 of the CMHs of the 8 in our region have attained that accreditation. And what that does is that expands our services and gives us an opportunity to receive a little bit more money, okay? The biggest piece of that I want you to look at is the second sentence under CCBHC, where it talks about if we obtain that designation, we're required to serve anyone who requests care for mental health or substance use, regardless of their ability to pay, place of residence, or age. Okay? That would expand our services significantly. The next one is facility feasibility. Okay, so if we go for this CCBHC and we have to serve the expanded clientele, hire more clinicians, expand our employee base, the facilities that we have to figure out how to make that work. So that's facility feasibility. And the last one that we've been talking about is crisis stabilization. For people in crisis, how do we find a landing place versus the jail or the ER to kind of get them stabilized for that first 48, 72 hours and find a placement for them? If they're stabilized and are able to go back home, awesome. If they need to find a different place, that's kind of a transition place. So that's my presentation. I'll open up for questions and answers. Well, questions, hopefully I have the answer.
If not, Louis is here, he can answer.
I'm just supporting John.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have a quick question. On your county appropriation and mandatory expenditures, in fiscal year 2021, you had a deficit of $278,203. But yet, you had in 2021, you gave back $2 million. I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it.
Correct. So, again, the standard cost allocation, or this cost allocation plan that we're under, so there's 3 pots of money is what they call it, right? Medicaid has to be spent on Medicaid, right? State general fund has to be spent on general fund, and anything beyond that spills over to local. Local, we get our allocation, which includes client fees, anything we can grab there. But the first dollars that have to come out of there, payment to the regional entity, payment for state hospital, right? Those are the things that have to come out of the local according to the allocation plan.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, very nice report.
Thank you. Tried to be brief and get to the points.
They do a good job. I was there 2 years ago, and we're in a state of crisis, and with John and Louis' leadership, oh my God, within 3 months, complete 180-degree turn.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah.
Complete.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I have one question, I guess. I know that in that, I don't know if it was 2020 or 2019, but when that local share amount fell from 195 to 114, I believe that local share, the county matches, comes from what I think SWMBA says is required under the Public Act. Could you, I guess, elaborate for the board the difference between, I think for this year it's 123 or something. I know SWMBA gave us that number, but I know you had talked about wanting to see that increase back to 195. So that's, say, $70,000 difference. If the county were to contribute to that, what does that $70,000 provide for exactly? I know you kind of talked about the local matches and things, but if the county were to increase that appropriation, what does that provide for the county as a whole?
So, truthfully, it's what we're doing right now, because there is a shortfall over again, way before I was here. I mean, prior to 2019.
Yeah.
Right? At some point in time, that had been reversed, right? So there was a surplus of some kind, right?
Okay.
Which we've saved up and held on to. So what's happening now is we're spending that down. Okay? So at some point in time, it's going to be spent down to zero, right? And will come to the county because, truthfully, that's your responsibility to cover those mandatory costs, unfortunately. So
Well,
our goal is to make sure that that doesn't happen.
And I guess that was my question, because when I talked to, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but when I talked to SWMBA, they told me that, kind of previous 114, and then now for this year it was like 123 or something, that was the required match under the Public Act. So I guess I was trying to figure out where the difference is. If that's what SWIMBA says is the required match, why are you saying it's higher than that? I guess where's the disconnect between what SWIMBA was saying and what you're, I guess, saying is the county's response?
If you want to flip to the slide in there, it's that county appropriation slide.
Yeah.
So,
So you're saying it's the state inpatient match and the state GF match?
So,
Those are the numbers that affect
those are
that.
mandatory required by Public Act or MDHHS or for the state general fund to gather the general fund money.
Okay, so that's-
The number that SWIMBA gave you was only their portion that they had to give. They didn't give you the other
Okay.
pieces that were required to pay, because it doesn't go to them.
Okay. That makes sense.
Just to ask for some quick clarification, under the Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic, it says age and including developmentally appropriate care for children and youth. Just, can you explain that? Mostly because my concern is undercutting parental rights. Like, are we gonna, is that just to help children that have mental issues, or is that expansive on anything?
So we don't do anything without parental or guardians until
Okay,
they become.
Thank you.
Correct, so, yeah, that's all part of the plan and the whole, yes, we don't do anything without the parental or guardian approval.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, nothing, thank you.
All right, my email's on the back on the last one, if you need to get a hold of me, thank you very much.
Thanks, John. I think the doctor came in.
I did.
If you're ready, we can take you now.
My GPS brought me to the shore of some lake that was beautiful. The colors are changing. I really enjoyed all of that, but the panic inside as you realize you're going to be late was taking away from the. You may, yeah, and actually you probably don't need that.
That's a lot of
Sticky note
paper you
that is
got
for
there.
Cass County.
It's a big packet.
Do we have any new commissioners since the last time?
We do.
5.
We do.
5 new ones, okay. Well, I'm Joyce DeYoung, and I'm the medical examiner here. I'll tell you a little bit about the office then. I've been your medical examiner, Sheriff Binky's for 2 years. That's, yep, I didn't know that, but he was pretty involved in that transfer. And we operate the office, kind of the headquarters are in Kalamazoo at the Western Michigan University Homer Stryker School of Medicine. And I'm the medical examiner for 12 counties. Most of them are in southwest Michigan, but then we also cover, we jump up and cover Muskegon, where I used to work with your fine prosecutor, Victor Fitz. That's where we first met some decades ago, it seems, and we've worked on a lot of cases over the years. And but we have Muskegon, and then Mason, Grand Traverse, and Leelanau. And what that shows you is that it's up to county commissioners who they choose for their medical examiner. So we cover all those. Oftentimes when people think about the medical examiner's office, they jump right to autopsies, and it is a big part of what we do. But also within the county, we have our own investigators that are here in Cass County. And when a death is reported to our office, they're employed by us. They respond from Cass County directly to that death, to that scene. And there is a determination made to see if it meets our jurisdictional criteria. But then they'll go out and they will investigate the death on behalf of our office. Now, we have currently 6 board-certified forensic pathologists. We have one open position, which would give us 7. A fair amount of our funding for the pathologists comes from the medical school to teach pathology in the medical school. But we also have but because we cover such a large area, we can have a large center like that. And so The investigators will contact the on-call medical examiner once they're at the scene. Now, oftentimes, they know certain cases just need to be brought up and sent to us for a postmortem examination. But if there's any question before they can release them directly to the funeral home, they need to talk to the pathologist and have a conversation about that, about what happens. So that's a big part of what happens. In addition, if that individual, let's say everything about it looks natural, but it's somebody who there's no evidence of foul play or trauma or neglect or anything like that, but that individual chose not to see a physician for the last, year or 2, 5 years, 10 years of their life, we'll end up doing that death certificate as well. So we handle the death certificates and work with the funeral directors in the area. So when an autopsy is needed or a postmortem exam, it is brought to Kalamazoo, where we have really a high, we have the best center in the state. We have more equipment than any other location in the state, even those east side counties. We have a CT scanner. I think we're the only one in the state with a CT scanner, which gives us additional information. And also, that's something that we just obtained, and we received that with through a generous donation. We try and get most of our big capital expenses or big capital equipment through donors. So this was. But that helps us in many cases to not have to do an autopsy, and that oftentimes families are thankful for that, especially if there's a family with a religious objection. We can gather a lot more information from having the autopsy. Even if it's not religious, if it's just an objection whatsoever, there are clearly times we still need to do this, but we have additional imaging equipment then to help us with that. So the other thing that we'll do in the county is we also authorize all of the cremations. So anytime a funeral director wants to, if the family chooses to cremate, we look through, we review those deaths as well to make sure that a cremation's not occurring that shouldn't. When we look at Cass County, just Cass County, we only have 2 years of data, so we can't really see a lot of trends yet in what's happening. In some of the counties you'll see, I think Allegan's the oldest county, but Muskegon, I've been the Muskegon County Medical Examiner since 2000. Since 2000, so we have a lot more data to look at trends and things. And Cass County, we'll get there, but hopefully we just see things constantly improving. I think the things that sort of jumped out to me with Cass County and with the deaths and is really the drug-related deaths, which is something that's a big topic in all of our counties. There were a total of 8 drug-related deaths in Cass County, and when I looked through those, 6 of them have a fentanyl in there. Nope, I take that back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the 8 have a fentanyl in there, which it could be paraforal, but they all have fentanyl in there, and that's the big. That's the lethal drug that we're seeing, and it's everywhere. In some counties, it's quite really high, extremely prevalent. Muskegon County is one that's really seeing a big increase this year. So I think that's still out there and affecting this community as well. And and it's one death, but yet these are people that have families, they have children, they have loved ones in the community, and it affects all of them. And so obviously the people who use drugs, it's a challenge for the families as they're still alive, but also what their deaths are really traumatic for them as well. Motor vehicle deaths, it is, they came down from 21 to 22, from 17 to 13. I do want to point out, though, when we count these deaths, it's the deaths that occurred in the county. And some of these might be delayed quite a bit. And sometimes I know I was up in one of the counties and the sheriff said, we didn't have that many, but it was more, it's more, even if they die 2 years later, okay? So they get in a car accident and they die 2 years later, and it's clear they wouldn't have died when they died had it not been for those injuries. It's still considered a motor vehicle related fatality, so it might not have been that they died immediately after the accident. There, if you now that you have your report too, you can take that home with you and look through it. And one of the reasons why we put all of the counties in there is that people always want to know about counties that are similar to theirs or their neighboring counties, and what are they seeing? And that was a frequent source of questions. So we add that information in so you can look around and look at your, what other counties are close in your population, like St. Joe County, and kind of compare. Sometimes there's a lot of variability between counties, and that typically is because they have a hospital in them. So they might be, their population is about the same, but one of them has significantly more deaths. That's typically a place that has a tertiary care hospital, but people are coming in from outside counties to that county. Allegan's an example of one where they have fewer deaths than what you'd expect, because they either drop down south to Kalamazoo, or they're going over to Holland, or they're going up to Grand Rapids and the deaths are counted there. So overall, I would say that the state of the office is strong. Like I said, we're missing, we had one forensic pathologist move to Missouri to be closer to all of his children and grandchildren live in Missouri, and so I thought the kids and grandkids should move here, but instead they went there. So we are recruiting. There's a severe shortage of forensic pathologists in the country that we're dealing with. So recruiting's not especially easy, but I'm confident we'll be able to fill that spot. I'm currently until the end of this year, I'm the president of the National Association of Medical Examiners, where we've been doing a lot of workforce work and working on increasing the number of forensic pathologists in the country. But to make a forensic pathologist right out of high school takes about 15 years, so it's a bit of a long process. So we can't really just flip a switch or send someone to a 2-week course. So what kind of questions do you have, if any?
Yes, sir. Jim?
When you were talking about the fentanyl, is it because of the amount of fentanyl that they took, or just because that drug is so bad?
It's probably both, and these are not, the fentanyl is not a prescription fentanyl. These are being illicitly produced. So this is coming in from, I guess the large belief is from outside of the country, and it's very easy to transport. If it was difficult to transport, that law enforcement would have it covered, but it's very easy to transport and distribute and hide, and so it's going to be it's a challenge. So, but it's illicitly produced fentanyl, and they don't really know the dose they're getting, and oftentimes we'll see. I think we are seeing cases where it's being put into other drugs. We had a big spur one day in Kalamazoo where we had, I think there were 12 overdoses and 8 fatalities in one day, where suddenly, we're just getting all these calls and you're realizing it, and most of the people who died were individuals who typically would use cocaine or methamphetamine. And in these cases, there was fentanyl in the cocaine and fentanyl in the methamphetamine. Because their families would say they never used opioids. They were, yes, he had a methamphetamine problem, but had no inclination and had never in the past, you can look through. Usually when we have someone who dies, they've had previous overdoses, and we can see medical records of that, where they've been repeatedly, had issues and survived. But I think it's being tainted in other drugs as well.
Good information. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. If you do have, so I'll close by saying, if you do have questions, my email address is somewhere in this report, near the front pages.
Not going to take us some remote lake, is it?
You'll enjoy it if you do. It's really lovely. But also, if you ever get a call from one of your a family member, somebody that you represent, and they're having trouble getting a death certificate, or they're having any challenge whatsoever with our office, my hope is that they never have to go to you because they're having difficulties. But if you are, please contact us, because they're the ones that we really focus on as far as meeting their needs and getting them the information that they need. And we try very hard, even if there's a certain investigation that's going to require longer than our normal time periods that we quote to them, we try and manage that and let them know if there are going to be unexpected delays. But if you ever hear anything, please reach out to our office, and we'll certainly take care of it. So, All right, thank you so
Yes,
much.
ma'am, thank you.
Thank you. Interesting report, wow.
You have to follow that, Danielle.
All right, I heard 10 minutes. In my head, I heard 5 from that, so I'll try to be nice and quick for you.
I was giving the doctor the high sign, but she didn't,
I have enough experience with you now that I know what we're here for.
Yes, ma'am.
We're getting the job done. What I wanted to provide to you today is just a little bit of an overview of 2023. So in the packet you have just a quick kind of 3-page report, then you have the actual budget that we are using for our annual budget, which you likely already received a copy of, and then a flu clinic schedule. There is a flu clinic tomorrow at the COA if you still need your flu shot. So looking at the first page of this colorful document, I wanted to highlight just a few things. When I first started in the summer of 2021, one of the pieces that I really wanted us to focus on was diversifying our funding. We were really heavily reliant on state and government funds, and given the work that we do, that's just not necessary for all of our funding to come from that source. And so I'm proud to share some of the ways that we have done that, especially in this past year. So once we got through COVID, which of course was outside of our control in terms of what we spent our time on, this past year we were really able to identify our own strategies and focus more on the needs of the community as opposed to just the needs that are being driven by the state or national government. So really quickly, I do want to point out that Cycle 8 accreditation occurred in September. So this is something that happens every 3 years. All local public health departments in the state of Michigan must be accredited to ensure that we are upholding the standards that we were designed to uphold. And so we pass with flying colors. We're really proud of that. There's a lot of work that goes into it. It happens every 3 years. So we are good for another 3 years. This past year, we did take on the Cass County Marijuana Operation and Oversight Grant on behalf of this county, so that was about $16,000. With those funds, we produced a campaign that was a tri-county campaign in conjunction with Van Buren and Berrien County called the Dirt on Weed, focused on educating pregnant and nursing mothers on the dangers of using marijuana while nursing or pregnant, focused on helping parents understand the impact of marijuana on the teenage brain, and then locking up your marijuana, ensuring that it gets just to the places where it's designed to get and not to little hands. And so those were the 3 primary focuses. We did take that grant this year because there wasn't a home to go to. In the past, it has gone to Woodlands and or the sheriff's office, and so this is a grant that you guys get to determine who takes that on. And for our county, this is the 3rd year in a row that we did a tri-county effort. So it seems to be successful, and I would encourage, whether it's us or someone else, for that to continue. Kindergarten oral health assessment. So about a year and a half ago, there is an addition made to state public health code, which added oral health as a pre-kindergarten screening in addition to hearing and vision. Not every county in the state has this program right now because not every county was prepared to go. We were, thankfully, because of our dental program and our dental outreach program that already existed. Because of that, our neighbors in Berrien County did ask if we would take on their school and jurisdiction as well. So that's, again, another tri-county effort. So we will see another increase in funding for that and continue. We're really fortunate all Cass County schools have been visited by our dental hygienist and her assistant, and we'll continue that. NACHO, Vaccine Hesitancy Grant. So NACHO stands for National Association for County and City Health Officials. That is a national grant. We were one of 20 selected to pilot a project to see if we could not impress upon the importance of vaccine and address the hesitancy in our area. We did that through a number of efforts, but primarily a campaign. If you want more details, page 2 and page 3 of this report provides that. United Way of Southwest Michigan. So one particular resource as a public health department that we have not necessarily upheld as well as we should is nutrition. Part of our accreditation requires that we have nutrition education, and since we do not house the Women and Children's Program, or WIC, we really fall short of meeting that criteria. Because of that, we were seeking some funding to support how we can address this. So the United Way has supported us for a 3-year grant for a total of $150,000 to create a nutrition and physical activity task force. It is cross-county, so Van Buren and Cass, with the intent of identifying the gaps and then collectively with partnerships figuring out how we can support that happening. We are not intending that we're necessarily going to create a program, but rather we're going to help our partners by identifying additional revenue sources and really just being the conduit to saying the gap exists, who better than to help fill that gap. CDC workforce. So last year, the CDC provided funding to local health departments focused on improving our workforce. So of course, as you can imagine, we lost actually not too bad. Public health as a whole lost a lot of employees during COVID, but ours seemed to maintain fairly well. And so this was designed to get us back into non-COVID era and make sure that our workforce is prepared and ready for the next potential pandemic. Dental equipment. If you visit our dental office at all, you may have noticed that there was an upgrade recently. This past year, we invested $348,000 into both of our clinics. New chairs, we moved to digital x-ray sensors, we have new lights, and Dowagiac we repainted. So we were really trying to invest and kind of bring us up to the 21st century. Our website has been upgraded. If you used it at all in the last 2 years, you know how horrible it was. And so now the user face is a little bit more friendly, easier to use. There's still a lot of work yet to go, but it is live, and I would encourage you to check it out. I especially appreciate on the homepage, if you go to our website and scroll all the way down, you have a really quick links to anything public health topic you can imagine, from rabies to flu to water supply. It's a really quick access way to find your way to some other sources like the CDC, because I know that is a really challenging website to navigate. So that's kind of the gist. We do have our annual report, which I would encourage you to check out. That's a much longer report. 2024, what's to come? Some really exciting things. So our NACHO grant that we had for the last 2 years, we were invited to present at the national conference for. They really loved our project and wanted us to share about what we did. And so when another opportunity came up, we said, let's go for it. So we were awarded again another $150,000 from NACHO. This one is to address just vaccine in general. So recognizing that our numbers are low, especially in childhood vaccines, and how are we going to address that? So this one's actually a pilot project. They funded just a handful of health departments across the nation to pilot some various campaigns to see if it could make a difference. We were asked to choose one community, and so for us, we chose Marcellus based on partnerships we have there and then the numbers that supported that choice. So you may see more campaign information coming out soon. I mentioned CDC Workforce Development Grant, but this year, we will also be receiving the first of 4 installments on the CDC Local Health Department Infrastructure Stabilization Grant. So this one, local health services at the state of Michigan fought for our behalf to receive this funding. This funding is phenomenal. This funding is fairly unrestricted. This funding, they took a large pot in the state and they split it equally across counties. That is unheard of, across health departments. That's unheard of. That never happens. So especially for counties like ours in Cass and Van Buren, we are almost always getting the short end of the stick and hardly anything to work with. In this case, we get $704,000 over a 4-year period, which can be essentially used on anything we so deem. There are a few restrictions, like we can't build a new building and some other things, but otherwise it's really intended for us to say, what do we need? How do we build our infrastructure? How do we ensure that we have the staffing and the appropriate tools to be able to do our job? So we're very excited about that. That first installment will come, really we should be seeing it any time now. And then We were able to make some adjustments in wages for our staff this year, given the increase in revenue, again, diversifying our funds. We used some of the workforce development funds to hire a contractor to identify who needed increases, and we made those changes. Monthly reports, hopefully you guys are receiving those. So it is our intent to start communicating better, to be more transparent, to help you understand all the goodness that goes on, because we are so much more than a lot of times what you see in the public interface. And so we'll continue that. That is just one part in our attempts to be more transparent in the future. We're hoping eventually to get some new information up on our website related to financing, et cetera. So speaking of financing, this year we went through a transition in our finance department after almost 35 years. We transitioned in our finance director role, and so with that comes a lot of challenges, just as opening the box sometimes does. So our heavy focus is going to be on really dialing in on our management, our organization, and then the strategy of how we're going to best utilize those funds while continuing to grow our agency. We are down to one part-time dentist in Dowagiac. This is the not so good news. We're looking at ways that we can hire a full-time dentist. Prior to that, thank you. I failed. I failed.
I'm giving you the high.
But I just love public health. So we were at 1.5 dentists. We're down to a part-time dentist as of the end of September. So if people are having challenges getting in, that's probably real. Our part-time dentist has added more to her schedule, but she still can only handle so much. So especially as you're considering your veteran service program, I just want to be really clear about our limits right now and encourage you to communicate with us. We're doing the best we can, and hopefully we'll have somebody in that spot soon. That's it. That was really it. That was my final. Okay.
Well, I will say, Danielle, that of all the 14 committees I'm on, yours is, because I'm the vice chair of the health department, that is one of the more pleasurable ones to be on, and they actually do stuff and get things done, and me and her have a really good relationship, you know, and I appreciate that and appreciate what you do.
I appreciate you.
All right. Yes, sir.
I just want to say, I really do appreciate the new website. I know you're still working on it, but I was surprised at the amount of calls I get from people that are looking at, like, water permits and like septic in general. And people, I think, used to have a lot of hard time with it. A few different times now I've gotten calls directed them to your website, and they might even be on the phone with me still, and they're like, oh, that was easy to find. So I've heard a lot of good feedback
Yes.
from people that have called me and eventually directed to you.
So
that's
long
good.
overdue. So long overdue. Thanks.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm gonna have to get with people prior to and be like, hey, this is the highest sign, but don't say nothing. Make me the bad guy. All right, does anybody have any committee reports they'd like to share? Yes, sir.
I'll begin. So we met with the Economic Development Committee, and we've only met a couple times because we meet every 2 or 3 months or so based on what we got going on. But I'm happy to report that now that we've entered a long-term agreement with Market Van Buren, they're attending our meetings, and we're gonna start working more collaboratively together. Our upcoming meeting in November, we're gonna extend it from 1 hour to 2 hours because we're gonna sit down and talk about KPIs and how we're gonna work together from, as a county standpoint with Market Van Buren and figure out a way to measure success, not necessarily always in a dollar figure, but what's being done for our county. And so this is really gonna allow Economic Development Committee to kind of have a little more oversight over Market Van Buren and hold them a little more responsible. And so we're also gonna work on generating a report that I can then come back into the board and present to you guys on what's going on with Market Van Buren. So we're very excited about that next meeting. Zach and I will try to get together ahead of time to finalize what that report's gonna look like. So if anyone has any input, questions, or concerns on what they want presented at this board meeting on behalf of Market Van Buren, let me know. And I'll work with Zach on getting a report put together.
I see somebody in the audience that you got their attention. Roseanne?
Well, I'm going to try and be brief because,
It's okay. You don't have a time limit.
well, I attended the Niles Area Transportation Study on September 24th. And as a result of the census, there was a slight boundary change, and it happened. It happens to be in my district. But keep in mind that Nats is Mason, Ontois, Milton, St. George, 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 St. Geor Howard, and the rest of parts of Berrien County, Buchanan, Niles, etc. So if you're not in one of those townships, then it really doesn't apply to you, except I do have what federal programs are doing, but I'm not gonna go there now, because I'll make this more brief. Anyway, these changes, these boundary changes affect funding. Now Buchanan went from rural to urban, and they will get dedicated funding every other year. And the rural areas get rural task force funding. So I'm going to move on. Human Services Coordinating Council met on October 11th, and the new Department of Health and Human Services Director was there, and her name is Karen Mercath, and she replaced Chuck Rose. And Chuck Rose was there for so long and did such a great job, but I'm anxious to actually sit down and talk with her. Deborah Hackworth of Domestic Abuse and Sexual Assault Services gave the presentation. And two things: firearms are very prevalent in domestic violence, and intimate partner violence is more prevalent in rural areas. And then I asked her how many she had on staff. Pre-COVID, she had 21 employees, and now she is down to 12. And I have the helpline number, 800-828-2023. Then Brian, Joyce, Administrator Newton, and I, we attended the MAC conference in Kalamazoo. And I'm just going to say this: it was probably one of the best conferences that when we reviewed at the end, we said, we need more. Give us more. We can take more workshops. And they were very good. The keynote speaker talked about multi-generational workplace, and it was the best keynote speaker not that any of them are bad, but he was excellent. And one thing I took away from his is he was an advocate of personal contact. He said, go sit down, talk to him, which I think is a good idea. I attended the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission, and we met, Matt and I met with the new Michigan Works Coordinator, Paul Kirk, and then I also attended the jail ministers event last Tuesday night. So is that enough?
That wasn't bad.
Thanks.
Danielle, you don't have to stay. I won't be offended if you got somewhere to be. RJ, you got anything?
Not at this time.
All right. Jim?
Not at this time.
Joyce?
I just wanted to reiterate what Roseanne said about the MAC conference. It was a very, very good educational one. Brought a lot of insight in it. I went to the workshops on aging services, which talked about how they're trying to move a lot more to home care help instead of necessary facility, and trying to, with the management of wages of increase, since there's such a low staff in nursing, overall nursing, period. They had a lot of good information. And then I attended the cyber workshop, which was very, very interesting. I mean, it really blew my mind. It demonstrated a live attack, showing a screen of the person that was attacking and the person that was being attacked, and how they did it. It was very, very good. Anyway, and then I attended the workshop on trends of hunting and fishing in Michigan, and that was good. There was a lot of conversation back and forth in that one, but it was good. And found out that Michigan has the most freshwater bodies in the world.
Dang.
Yes, I thought that was really interesting.
And I fished almost all of them this year in Cass County.
And then the workshop on election, that was a very informative workshop. I mean, it opened my eyes up to so much more that they're having to handle. We really do need to support them. You don't even know half of the requirements and what they're wanting to do and put up on them. So it's just, in the townships, It's a lot.
That's why we trust Monica so much, so I don't have to know that, so I can sleep at night.
Oh.
I don't want to know, I just trust her.
So, yeah. So it was, they were very good workshops, very informative, and yeah, I enjoyed it.
Thanks. Mary?
Okay, attended the Board of Health with Jeremiah. Always nice to see Daniel. In the paperwork that we received, they had given us about rabid bats. And there was a case of a rabid bat found in Lawton, Michigan, and it was collected from the home. The last time that there was a rabies tested positive person was in 2021, or I should say it was an animal. And they're warning that if you do have a bat and you come in contact with it, and especially if you get bit, of course, call emergency immediately, but also let the Board of Health know so that they can keep track of this. And I've always been told that bats are a protected species between May and August. So you have to be careful during that time period. We have bats in our attic at home, and we can't get rid of them. So they're just there. I have to clean up after them. Also, if you do get bit, try to keep the bat alive, because they're gonna need that to test for rabies. So you don't wanna go through all the shots and find out that you didn't have rabies, so.
Well, hopefully it don't bite you between May and April, so you don't go to jail for swatting that mug across the room, because I'm gonna kill that bad boy.
I know. So, but please contact the Board of Health on this information. So I found this very interesting because I can relate to it.
All right, now, the only thing I got is the same thing from the health department that affects me is, we had a couple cases of Lyme disease in Cass County, and one was in Pokagon. So, yeah, and the person that had it, I know them personally. They said they didn't see the tick bite, didn't see any bites, no nothing, but was really, really, really sick. And then, I was one of those people. I'm like, what? So they reported it to the health department, like Mary said, and she was one of the statistics. Other than that, I don't have anything. District reports. You can go back around the horn. Anything for your district?
I'm sure there's stuff going on, and I'm not gonna try to purposely forget anything, but I can honestly say that I'm very happy with the roundabout situation and there in Milton. That's
Beautiful.
really, it's amazing what they've done, the work that they've done, and now I just go right up to that intersection and just use it and never have to wait, so.
Yeah.
Amazing work that they've done.
How about the people that came here? How are they?
So the fourth lake has not been put.
That's not part of them yet?
So,
Okay.
no issue there yet.
All right. Roseanne?
I attended an open house for the Atwood Township Edwardsburg Joint Master Plan, and it was very well attended and very, very well done. I attended a ribbon cutting ceremony for a boutique called Little Pieces of Me, which had been in one mall, and then she bought a building, and she's expanded, and if you have a teenager, it's a good place to go. I also attended a lunch for the food pantry volunteers and the Edwardsburg Chamber of Commerce.
All right. RJ?
Not at this time.
All right. Jim?
Well, the only thing that I have in my district right now is ambulance service, which we're gonna be discussing here shortly, so we'll see what happens.
What about the water thing there in
Oh, the
Dowagiac?
water thing too, yeah, and I do know that they found lead in the water, and they've distributed filters throughout the city of Dowagiac. And if you want your water tested, I believe they'll test that for free. And and this is in the city of Dowagiac. So I don't know of anything outside of the city. We have well water. I've not tasted any lead in my water, so I think I'm good.
Ain't eating no pencils to compare. They also said that the requirement for that lead is like so many millions parts per billion with a B. Dowagiac was only 2 parts over the standard, so And then the Department of Health is changing that standard to lower it, so they were gonna be there anyway. So this is not good that it happened, but they're gonna be in essence, getting ahead of the game for when they lower the standard. So, and they've done a really good job of passing out all the free filters and then even install it for people that if they don't know how to do it. So, Joyce?
Nothing at this time.
All right.
We're still kind of at a standstill in all our
Same.
townships.
Mary?
Like Jim, urgent need for the ambulance
Yeah.
in our area.
Well,
So hopefully we'll get that.
for my district report, I'm the one that's affected the most, and we've got an ambulance service, and I think it's Smackus, that they're extending it for a reasonable price till December. They and they're giving us 90-day extensions, and it's like a third of the normal cost. So, you know, like you said, we'll talk about it. All right. Administrator's report.
Yes, my report is in the packet, but I will touch on a few things. I'll try to be brief. The historical courthouse, I'm sure some of you have noticed that there's finally some activity happening. It's the kind of early mobilization layout and kind of miscellaneous removals that we have in preparation for the major renovations that are going to kind of ramp up over the next couple of months. So it's exciting to actually see some activity taking place now. The medical care facility, the IT department has done a lot in terms of kind of working through the IT transition. We talked about this before, but the county IT department is taking over all of the management of IT infrastructure and their network over there at the medical care facility, and they're also going to be offering help desk services. That included doing a lot with the actual network and then working with installing 50 new computers. So I think props to Jody and the IT team for all the hard work they put into it. We would anticipate for the next committee of the whole working through another interlocal agreement regarding IT services for both the medical care facility and road commission for our ongoing support of their networks as well as equipment support and help desk support. So we'll keep a lookout for that next month. With the MIDC grant and the Public Defender Administrator, I'm happy to report that the county did hire a new Public Defender Administrator. Unfortunately, she was not able to be with us tonight. She had a obligation that came up, but we will have her next time. Tricia Smith is the new Public Defender Administrator. She actually had some prior experience with us as the attorney at First Arraignment. She was actually contracted to do that before, and so I think in a lot of ways this was a good kind of natural transition because she's assuming those duties as the Public Defender Administrator as well. Over the next couple of months, we're going to be working to complete renovations to the Public Defender's office that we're going to have over at Long Courts for the permanent home for them. So still a work in progress, but we're making a lot of good movement towards that. I think I attended the MAC conference too. Roseanne and Joyce, I think, touched on that really well. I enjoyed my time there as well. One of the things, and I agree with Roseanne, the multi-generational workplace presentation was really interesting. One thing I was surprised at, and even me, in the millennial generation, I had assumed the answer to this, but they were talking about where the remote work requests were coming from, who was actually taking advantage of that the most. And I think for better or for worse, a lot of people would say, oh, those millennials are the ones that really want to work from home and are driving that. But when they actually were talking about the percentages, it was surprising. The baby boomers actually were the ones that were really driving a lot of work from home. It made a lot of sense. I think, in terms of, kind of the connections that we're talking about with people, a lot of the younger people really were looking for that. Maybe didn't have homes. Their apartments were kind of small, I guess one of the tech executives posited. And I think as you get older, you've got a lot more responsibilities at home, things like that. So I was surprised. I assumed it was going to be millennials, but it wasn't. So there was a lot of good content and things we learned that I think we're going to try to incorporate and filter into our operations here. The last thing I'll touch on is the county website. The refreshed website is now live, so if you go to casscountymi.org, you can see the changes that we have there. There's a different color scheme. I guess I would touch on that the color scheme is actually designed to be kind of a consistent branding across the county. So when we have the historic courthouse, a lot of the color schemes that you're going to see for the county building are kind of mimicked across the website now. So that's kind of where that color palette comes from. For the homepage, we focused on doing a lot with trying to make information easier for folks to find. There's a really great How Do I section that we're planning to build out even further. The calendar's now got a couple different tabs on it. And there's just a lot of different, I think, revisions that were made to really try to make it easier for folks to find what they were looking for when they visited the site. So I guess the caveat I'll give is that websites are, as I think Danielle was kind of talking about, are never really done. They're always works in progress. So we know that there's a lot of content that we're going to be adding and changing and revising as we go along. So if anybody notices anything, says, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could add that? Or hey, have you thought about this? Shoot me an email, let me know if you see something or would like us to explore something, and we're happy to do that.
I'd like to see the sheriff with a green and maize and blue piece of cake next weekend on the front, on the home page. That's what I'd like to see.
We'll see if we can get him to sign
Not a green and white one that she's gonna eat, but a maize and blue one. Any questions for our administrator?
I just,
Yes, sir.
sorry if I didn't hear this, but regarding the courthouse, you said you're still working through the final closing of that grant.
Yes.
Is there anything that's getting in the way of that, or?
No, I think we've learned, I guess to put it bluntly, that when you're working with the USDA, plan on it taking a while.
Okay.
So I can tell you that where we're at in that process right now is there was quite a bit of document requests that were sent over from the local USDA office. We completed all of those documents and sent them back, save for one. One of those was a title search that we had to do, so it takes a little bit more time. We actually had to contract that out. It's not something we could do internally to satisfy what USDA wanted, so we're waiting on that to come back. And then she actually, I've talked with her, we're working to plan a closing and pre-construction meeting to kind of get everything finalized and get everything in place for the funds to start flowing in. So we're in the home stretch with that. I think we're in a good place. It's just got the final I's and T's have to get taken care of for us to be able to get going.
What does that do for like our overall timeline on this?
Actually, I think with the way that we've been kind of planning that kind of mobilization layout and kind of trying to get a little bit of ahead in terms of preparation, so far we've been told that it really hasn't affected the timeline at all. So we're still shooting for, I guess I don't want to overshoot here, but I think we're looking at probably end of July, more likely August timing next year, depending on how things roll. But it should be end of summer, early fall. So we're still on track right now to meet that goal.
You're in trouble now. You said dates. You're in trouble now. Anybody else? Thanks, Matt. Jen?
Just a few things to note. I sent out an email earlier. The auditors will be here. They're gonna be here for their preliminary stuff about a month earlier than they normally are. So they cost me to sweat a little bit, but it'll be fine. It's just the preliminary, and then they will be back for the week of January 15th. So I just kind of let all the elected officials, department heads, as well as the board kind of know that. I just got back from an MGFOA conference. That was very nice. Good to see the auditors and catch up with them as well as some other finance people. They had some really, really great sessions there as well. I was very happy, and I actually applied for a scholarship to go there for that conference, which was nice. So it was very minimal expense to the county, which made me super excited too. And just one other thing I want to mention, everybody is very excited to see how expenses and revenues ended for the year. I realize that it's October and the year ended as of 9/30 by law for about 60 days afterwards. Anything that really should have gone to the previous year, I am manually moving that back. So we will not have any idea of what that looks like. Because it impacts revenues as well as expenditures, and when you consider most of your revenues, or a lot of revenues that are coming in are your grant reimbursements, as well as your taxes, and we really just can't guess. I mean, with grants, we kind of know where we're at, what tax revenues and what might come in before that time frame. We're not sure yet. So as we look at reports, the finance report is in there. It is most definitely going to change.
So just wanted to point that out, and I will get out information as soon as I can. I know everybody's agreeing us where we're headed, so.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jen. Any questions for our finance director? All right, I haven't seen Cree for our veterans
She
administrator.
was sick, unfortunately.
Man, it's a lot of that going around. But I know she's doing, as a person on our appointments list, Scott Swanson, because I'm the chair of that board, you know, being the only veteran on the board of commissioners. And I miss a few of the meetings because we have these meetings to go to, and it conflicts. So we're trying to appoint another guy that covers my spot, because I cover Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan. He has been to Desert Storm and Afghanistan, you know, so, and we already have a person for Iraq. I cover everybody, just, you know, but that'll help out. All right, county partners, we have, yeah, Corey, you stood up first.
Somebody else can go first.
That's too late now, you're already on your way, I'm starting the timer.
Might as well. All right. Corey Blivis with Cass County Conservation District. And usually try to keep to the positive things, but reality strikes me sometimes. So I want to make sure that you're all aware that our executive director did resign. So Jake Young is no longer our director. And I'm wearing two hats for the same price. We'll see, doing the best that I can. And so with that, I want to cover a few other things than just soil erosion and sediment control. I want to start with MEEP, our agriculture program. They just had a goal setting meeting today with Michigan Department of Agriculture. And we're behind with verifications and re-verifications, but we're stepping out into this year looking great. They have new requirements for the numbers, and Emily is, I'm sure she's going to hit those requirements. And ARIS was awesome, as you recall, and so there's a lot of re-verifications that she's going to have to do, and it's a large amount. So we're going to have to try to help her to meet those goals, and that will be the challenge, but I think we're on the right track to do that. We also have some good news that our Berrien County and us were involved with or applied for a grant, and we did receive that. We got notice that we received the grant for the regenerative agriculture technician. So that technician will be in our office a couple days a week, and, you know, over in Berrien County, the lead more over there, but still, we're going to be serviced, so I'm looking forward to that. In case you don't know what regenerative agriculture is, I had to look it up. The focus is on topsoil regeneration, increase biodiversity, improve the water cycle, enhance ecosystems services, biosequestration of carbon dioxide, and resilience to climate change. So they will also be helping the U.S. Department of the NRCS to take care of their backlog of programs. So really excited because that's helping our program. NRCS has had a great year, and you're going to see that in our annual report. Our annual meeting is on November 28th. You will get a formal notice, but put that on your calendar. It'll be in Silver Creek at the Sister Lakes Brewing Company committee room, or they have a town hall. I guess that's where we're going to be. So we're looking forward to that one. SISMA was able to get their grants. They're based out of Van Buren, but do work here. We will be involved with the work at Camp Tamarack and Dr. Lawless Park. We're still on the lookout for spotted lanternfly. They're doing the monitoring on that, and the woolly adelgid studies, I believe those are going to continue. I have not gone to a SISMA meeting yet. I just started doing this more recently, so I will know more about SISMA soon. But we also had a hydrilla scare, and that is a aquatic invasive species. They believe that through the quick monitoring, once they found it, they believe it is only located in the two ponds that it was first noticed in, and they'll be treating that, and hopefully we won't have that be worse than, it could be really bad. It's not through our department, but one of the other beneficial agriculture things is the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi have hired a new agriculture technician, and that'll benefit us as well. We'll be continuing our partners, and the climate resiliency technician. So pretty excited that they're going to be moving ahead in those ways. The water quality part of our program, we don't have a technician, but it is one of our focuses. We'll continue to do volunteer promotion of monitoring of the lakes and streams, and the Meanders group has reformed, and so we are part of their organization. We'll see strides there. So then back to soil erosion and sediment control. We did have 226 permits last fiscal year, 22 waivers. That's a record. So we are improving in that way. You received a letter from Eagle that we will be audited this year. We will have to assign somebody to be the designated legally responsible person, and that'll be somebody through the county, so we'll talk more about that, but kind of a heads up. We have made positive strides since our last audit with the number of permits, number of inspections, improved plan reviews, number of educational awareness programs, but we need more of all that. But I think we're going to have positive on our files and paperwork system. It's all good. But we do have already, we know that we will have a negative, that we have poor response time in some cases with violations, and then with inadequate funding for the full program. Our funding this year would have been negative. We ended up with a positive end of the year budget, but we would have been negative had we not gotten a $24,000 2-year major permit. That if we hadn't gotten that one, we would have been negative, and we can't be negative because we don't have the money for that. So we can talk, again, I'll answer questions about that kind of stuff outside of the meeting here. Another positive thing, we did start, a volunteer organization is working with us to do a 501c3 conservation stewards, and we'll be able to start getting donations through that organization. So one of the ways that we can try to improve our grants, seeking grants from foundations through that 501c3. So we're working on that one. And for SESC, we do have some problems with wetland impacts. Still concerned with wetlands. It is one of the major issues. Some problems with sites. So we're trying to work with the state of Michigan Eagle on those issues. And I'm trying to improve my violation response. Got a new way of doing it. So we'll see if that works. Oh, let's see if anything else. Nope. Oh, trunk or treat this weekend. So I hope you're all going to go to the Dr. Lawless Park. We're going to be there with our goodies and a MEAP-focused trunk.
Thanks, Corey.
All right. Thank you.
Before we go on any further, I don't know where, there's somewhere in the audience where you're hearing side discussions, and if I can hear it up here at the furthest corner of the room, I'm sure our audience on the internet and our YouTube viewers can hear it as well. So I'd ask that people keep the sidebar conversations to a minimum, or maybe go outside if you have to have a conversation. Thank you. All right. Another county partner. Who's going to jump up first? Nobody? All right. Elected officials. Ma'am, would you like to go first?
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I wouldn't call Vic a ma'am. That'd be dangerous to my health.
Well, there's another ma'am I know in the audience, so at least one, and Monica.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do want to say a quick couple of shout outs to several people. First of all, I wanted to give a shout out to Monica because, the circuit court file room is under her purview, and we do have an MOU where we work cooperatively now, and the circuit court file room has had a lot on their hands because we've been down a staff person for a long time, and it's just been great. our teams work really well together. And I just want to thank Monica because I know it's very stressful for her people because they're covering the jobs of 3 people with 2 people, and people get sick or have to be out, and so that means one person is covering the jobs of 3 people, and so that's really awesome. Then I also wanted to give a shout out to Hope Anderson because her staff, I just hear good things about them all the time, and this grant that they're administering to try to help people get home repairs, I personally know multiple people who were like crying, telling me all the good work that they're doing for them and the possibilities of possibly getting their houses fixed up, and that's huge because when you have a house that needs repairs and you don't have any way to pay for it, those things are huge, and Hope and her staff all always have lots of kindness and assistance, and everybody that knows Hope knows that she goes above and beyond, so. And then our sheriff, I wanted to say the jail ministry event that he put on this week, it was really wonderful. And if you weren't able to attend, I hope you can attend in the future because it really epitomizes, one of the really great things about working in Cass County and living in Cass County is we have such a nice community who comes together and, does what they can to help each other. And so that was really nice to see. I also just wanted to mention we had somebody at our Friend of the Court office who at the Michigan Family Support Council conference, which was held this month, Tracy Curiata, she's been with the Friend of the Court for over 20 years, I think 27 years, but I could have that number wrong. She got the 2023 Friend of the Court Staff Award, and so that's really wonderful because she's been a longtime Cass County employee, and she does phenomenal work in the Friend of the Court office, and I've had the pleasure of working with her, so I just wanted to tell you about that. Another thing that we did recently was we took some of our staff members at the courts out to the Pokagon Band Tribal Court and got to spend the day with Judge Petoskey, Judge Peterson, and their court administrator and their team, and that was wonderful. We got to experience some of their peacemaking techniques and sit in their fire room and go on a tour of their properties and just exchange a lot of ideas and information about how we run our courts. And the staff, we had staff that were present for what happened in that circular fire room, and people were like teary, just like feeling like it was such a good experience and such a learning experience for them to learn about the Pokagon Band. So we're really fortunate that we have the relationships we have with them, and I always want to make a plug for them because the reason our county courts can do so well in collecting things like child support so well is we get a lot of money from the Pokagon Band and other tribes who have employees who work in their casinos and in other places, and that helps us a lot because they collect a lot of child support for not only Michigan families, but families in other places in the country, so that's really wonderful. And then finally, I just wanted to remind everybody that we'll be having Adoption Day event again this year, and it'll be the Tuesday before Thanksgiving at 3 p.m., and more details will come later, but if you're able to attend that, we'd really love to have you join us because we love to celebrate adoptions and people who are, taking in children who don't have anybody to parent them. I know parenting is always a big topic here, but unfortunately some children don't have anybody who's willing to do that for them until somebody steps up to become their adopted family, so that's really a wonderful celebration. So I know the courts have items on D, E, F, and G, and I'll be quiet about those until those come up, but I just wanted to thank you for the chance to speak to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Fitz.
Not a whole lot tonight, but I just did want to mention a few things. One, I echo what Roseanne Marchetti said about Chuck Rose. He was just a phenomenal DHHS director, and we're going to miss him. Looking forward to working with the new director, and very optimistic, obviously, that we'll have a similarly positive relationship. But Chuck was just a great guy. And if you have his email, you might want to drop him just a note to express your appreciation. Next, and I've talked about this at a previous meeting, I've emailed Matt about this, and definitely looking forward to giving a presentation sooner than later to the commissioners about the prosecutor's office. I know sometimes it's a little bit of a mysterious thing even to commissioners as to what we do and so forth, and I've done this periodically over the last couple of decades, but it's been a few years since we've done that again, and I think it would be helpful to all of you, so I'll look forward to working with Matt to get that date set up at one of your future meetings. A couple of Joyces, Joyce DeYoung. Joyce, you couldn't get a better individual to be the forensic pathologist for Cass County. Her reputation precedes her throughout the state. Again, you couldn't get a better person, so we're very fortunate, and I think the sheriff chose wisely in that regard, and certainly she's done a lot of good things on a lot of our homicide cases over the years. The other Joyce, I appreciate your comments about the state of Michigan, about the fresh water. Just a couple add-on facts to that. Michigan also has the most boats per capita of any state in the nation because of the large number of lakes.
Yes, and I got one of them.
Yep. I've got a kayak too, so. And the other one that is a little bit more gloomy, Michigan is also we tie year in and year out with Washington as being the cloudiest state in the nation because we're surrounded by the Great Lakes. Last thing I'll just mention is, again, too, I know all the commissioners know her already and many in the audience, but just in the event, Mary Foster, my chief assistant, recently had her 1-year anniversary here in Cass County, and Mary's here. Mary, if you just raise your hand for those that don't.
Thank you, Mary.
You survived that, yes.
She's, if she can do that, she can do anything, and she definitely has been just a great addition to the office and so forth, just particularly with the new attorneys, and as we'll talk about in my presentation down the road, there's some pretty grim and sober stuff that gets dealt with a lot of times, including child molestations that Mary certainly is at the forefront of making sure justice is done on those cases, so.
We've got a workshop coming up. Do you think that'd be better for you to come into the workshop and give that presentation?
That'd be fine if that makes sense.
Instead of here, because here is, but a workshop would be a good place.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do it there.
All right,
so, okay.
yeah, we'll work that out.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Vic.
You bet.
Madam Treasurer, if you have anything for us.
Sure.
I have to go with the ma'am and Mr., from my error earlier.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank anyone who pushed or encouraged people to come to the Council on Aging. That was a great success. We had a meeting in Council on Aging in Dowagiac and here in Cass. They certainly pushed it. Between Helping Hands and Council on Aging, the rooms were full. And Helping Hands staff are helping people apply for these grants. Again, it's not easy to apply for these grants, and they expect homeowners to do that, elderly homeowners who don't know how to upload documents. And we are at capacity of trying to help people in my office, so their help is just so valuable, and if you ever need to promote something, Helping Hands knows how to do it, because that was a great success, and thank you to everyone who encouraged people to come out, and Judge Buehler, and I know you did, you sent some people out, and we're going to spend every penny of that $2 million in the county, so. I also wanted to mention that, as far as capacity, our Cass County HR, Beth, is helping me seek out an intern from SMC. We need some clerical help in my office, so I'm seeking an intern there. Let's see, the only other thing I'll mention, two more things. Our Veteran Service Director wanted me to share, I know she's out sick today, but a few months ago, there was a lady here from the public who was very distressed because she was the wife of a veteran who had 100% disability. He passed away, and then her exemption from property taxes was taken away. Well, just today, the General Property Tax Act has been amended to ensure that spouses of disabled veterans can keep their property tax exemption after their spouses pass away. That was
My wife will be very happy. Unfortunately, I won't be here to celebrate with her at that point. Dang it! Thanks, Hope.
And then the last thing, I would like to speak on the Brownfield Community-Wide Assessment Grant that I know that Administrator Newton is going to share on, but I can wait until that time. Thank you.
I might text my wife now. Madam Clerk? All right. Sheriff?
I was going to defer my time to Hope, but she didn't take enough. A couple things. One of the things that was approved in the budget is the jail
security system upgrade. I've been giving some information to Administrator Newton. We're hoping to get the, Capital Improvements Committee together to get looking at that, because we've just had another compromise in our system just this week with some cameras malfunctioning that can't be repaired, so that's the bad news. I want to give some good news. This radio tower that I've been talking about and kind of proud of, even got a little bit higher on the list. We were informed that was the first radio tower that was a bi-county effort. So between St. Joe County and Cass County came together to make that happen. It's the first time in the state of Michigan that it happened between two counties. So we're actually going to celebrate that, the fact that the tower project was so good, being on time, under budget, and functioning properly. That's kind of another whole level. So we're gonna have a ribbon cutting. I probably won't have a ribbon cutting, but we're gonna have St. Joe County down there, and we'll let you know when that's happening if you want to attend it. Because it's kind of a unique effort. It's a $1.98 million project that the county split and are funding with into the future with maintenance fees and everything. To give you an idea, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, in Berry County, they're getting ready to put up towers right now, and they're $2.4 million. So in 2 years, they went up basically $490,000. So anyway, just a couple little tidbits there. I think that's all my time because Hope took it all. So thanks.
Okay, wait, one. I want you to know that SEPSA is very happy with that tower.
Okay. Well, good. Also, Judge Beeler gave me credit. It was not my credit. It was my jail ministry put on a great fundraiser. Good. Commissioner Marchetti and her husband were there, and it was a really good event. They haven't been able to do it for 3 years because of COVID, and they didn't miss a beat. There was about 250 people there, including Judge Beeler and Judge Renfro, amongst others. But it was a nice event, but it's not my event.
Wow, you help.
I'm just the speaker.
I hear it raining outside, so I'm pretty sure the drain commissioner is out running around. Because I can hear it on the roof, so he ain't here, so that's probably why. Sunshiny days, he's happy. Rain, oh my God. That's it for elected officials. Under unfinished business, we have none, but I'm thinking I could probably mention something to our administrator. We need to get a salary committee.
Yes.
Meeting, and I'm being poked. I already did her. Okay. She said no. Ha ha. Ha ha. That's why state's gonna lose Saturday. Whoa.
Back row.
Whoa, whoa. Other than that, under new business, we have appointments, and we have 3 of the appointments committee members here, me, Joyce, and Jim. And it's Kevin Anderson, Cheryl DeLuca, Arel Chapman, Tom Miles, Diana McGrew, Annie File, Jane Bailey, Scott Swanson. And if you all would like, we all went through all these applications in depth. Oh my God, in depth. And a lot of them were referred. And what we do as a policy is we will talk to the existing committee and see if they recommend the person. If they do, that's part of our consideration. If they don't, that's also part of our consideration. But if they don't, we find out why, and if they're not a good fit, they don't go on there. You know, we don't recommend them. So everybody here is recommended. Matt's got one to add.
Yeah, one thing. I know the Department of Health and Human Services Board, which also serves as a medical care board, there is one seat that is becoming vacant as of the end of this month. The appointments committee was looking at options for reappointment or considering applicants. We didn't have quite the applicant pool that we wanted to have when they met first, so we've kind of reissued that out. But that appointment expires at the end of October. So I think the plan was to have the appointments committee look at having a quicker meeting, maybe sometime next week, to review the applications we've gotten now. And then if the board is okay with it, looking at having an item under new business for the regular meeting that would appoint whoever it is that's selected by the committee for consideration by the board, at least for that board, so that we don't have a vacancy for a month or something like that.
Okay.
So we don't have it now, but we would anticipate having that for the next regular meeting.
And whoever our appointments committee will get in depth with it and do our normal process, so it won't be any sneaky, shady stuff, especially with us. We don't play that. All right, so if everybody's good with item alpha,
Yeah.
to move to the business meeting,
Right.
we'll go ahead and do that.
So move.
All right. Bravo, or B, FMLA policy. I don't want to speak on that. Brownsville? No, we got B right here on the new one. On this one says FMLA.
Yeah, my B says FMLA.
He handed out a new one too.
Yeah, there it is. Because we had to change it because of Danielle Persky.
All right,
I'm sorry.
thank you.
How dare I mess you up? So, Bravo, FMLA policy. I can't speak on that.
You have Brownfield assessment comes after that.
Yeah, comes after that. Killing me, Matt. You the one that wrote this. Keeping me on my toes.
Anybody from the policy committee want
Yes, we worked on this and for a while, and we feel that this worked with Judge Beeler as well. Make sure that it was in accord with what they have to do. And so, Mary, anything good? RJ?
How many weeks?
Pretty extensive.
Yeah.
How many weeks do they get? 12 for FMLA?
Yes, depending.
Because I think that's a standard across the board.
I can add a little bit.
Yeah.
So the reason for the policy is that FMLA is obviously a federal mandate. You have to abide by that. And previously, I think there was some drive from the county to say, well, we don't need to have our own policy. We'll just follow federal law. But the challenge with that is there are kind of interplays between like personnel policies from our handbooks and how that might work with FMLA. So example, leave time is a big one. So, does leave time need to be used concurrently? One thing I'd like to highlight with the FMLA policy and some of the things we've kind of taken into account as we work through this is that there was a big concern on the part of Human Resources and in our working with elected officials and the committee on this is that we've seen instances where somebody takes FMLA leave and say whether it's pregnancy or medical or whatever it is, and they exhaust that full period. And then you come back and maybe you've got some sort of physical therapy you have to attend or additional doctor visits for your new baby, things like that. You may not have any time left if you're required to exhaust time. So what this policy actually does is allows employees to reserve 40 hours of leave bank time, whether that's vacation or ETO, so that when they come back, you could still have that available leave bank time for those other things that may come up. So we thought that was a big factor and something that was really important. And then, the rest of it essentially is making sure any of those gray areas that may have existed between the the federal law and the county's policies have been cleaned up so that there's no more questions.
You still have to apply for FMLA and get approved for that.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
So that process doesn't change. This was more about kind of identifying some of those kind of key areas where, well, wait a minute, how does this work with what the county's policies are? So it really does a good job of making sure that those questions are not kind of up in the air.
Is there an expiration date? Does it go year by year, or is it?
I believe it's 12 weeks in any 1 year period.
And then after that, they have to reapply?
You would, and leave can be taken all at once. There are options for intermittent leave depending on it. There's other options where if it's dependent care, things like that, somebody could have leave for that. So, this policy doesn't change any of those. I mean, that all follows federal law, but I think that we've got definitions there at the end. So I think after a lot of vetting and going through it, the policy we have turned out to be, I think, a really good one.
Yeah, and those 40 hours, you don't have to bank them. You can just use them. So that's up to the employee if they want to save that 40 hours or if they want to just use it during that time.
All right. We have any objection to moving that forward? All right. Now we get the Brownsville Assessment Grant. Now we're on that one.
I can talk again. I guess.
Make it quick, young man.
All right, so, many of you may know Jeff Hawkins. He was formerly with Envirologic. They actually merged, or maybe Fishbeck bought them. I'm not sure exactly the scenario, but they're kind of the main provider of environmental services with respect to economic development and things like that. So like phase 1 environmental studies, phase 2, things like that. So we've worked with him in various capacities. They've done some phase 1 assessments for us, and we've always wanted to look at how could we maybe partner with them in a meaningful way for the county. He approached us recently. I know Treasurer Anderson and the Vice Chair of the EDC, Leslie McClellan, and I were on a call with him. They announced that the EPA is opening up a program to allow for communities to seek funding for brownfield assessment grants. And so essentially what that would do is federal funding would be provided to the county. There's no county match that's required. And that would offset costs for us to be able to go out into the communities and determine what sites are brownfield eligible. So we have some rough ideas of some that we've had for a while, but we know that there are others out there that we may not be aware of.
Yes.
And this really, I think, is a big first step in identifying what those are and then enabling the county to then seek additional funding to address those brownfield sites.
That looks
So I
like
think when
one
you
there.
take into account that, yes, I mean, when you take into account that, brownfield can be a really big development tool from economic development, having this assessment done is a huge thing, and the fact that there really is no cost to the county, I think plays a big factor as well. The reason we have it on the agenda, we're working through right now with Fishbeck on applying for the federal grant through the grants.gov website. I'm not sure, since there is no matching requirement, if we have to have the Board of Commissioners sign off on the application piece of it, or if that would come later, when if the grant were to be awarded and there was an acceptance, if that would be when we would need to look at it. But wanted to give the board information what we were looking to do and kind of prepare in case it's a quick turnaround time. We have to have it back in, I think it's November 13th, does that sound right? Yeah. November 13th, I think, is when the application has to be submitted, so we had about 45 days, so not a long time. But if there is something that would come to the board, we would plan to do that at the next regular meeting.
All right. Any objection to that going forward? Yeah.
Through researching this, I understand that the grant was originally $500,000. Why did we go down to 3?
Well, I think part of it is, we had a good discussion about that with Jeff, and, I think the grant provides up to $500,000. And I think what Jeff had said is that we started looking at, in terms of the previous awards that have gone out to communities, what did those generally look like? It wasn't very common for communities to get the award seeking that full $500,000. It seemed like for counties our size in particular, and with our geographical area, $300,000 was kind of the sweet spot in terms of what we could do. I think a lot of times the EPA looks at options like that also, because if they get, say for example, 3 or 4 grants of $300,000, they might be able to kind of spread their dollars out a little wider. 2 or 3 grants at $500,000 versus 5 or 6 at $300,000. They're more likely sometimes to take that lower amount. So that was part of the calculus, was what did we think would be a reasonable amount that would provide for the study that we needed, but would help us try to ensure we would have more chance at securing the funding as well.
Okay, and I've not done a grant before, so they don't negotiate. I mean, if you would do the 5 and then come back and go, no, you can have 4. They don't do negotiation.
They consider your request like whatever you put in, so, if
So
we
we
said
have a
500.
much better chance at 3 instead of 5?
Yes, that was the idea, was that when you started looking at the work that we were planning to do and the size of the county, we felt that we had a better chance at $300,000, and mostly too because as they start doling out those awards, they're more likely to say, well, let's do 20 projects at $300,000 rather than 10 or 8 at $500,000, because you can spread that a little wider. So we've seen that that's been kind of a theme with EPA, so we wanted to do that.
If Connor could show how many brownfields we have them mapped already. In case you didn't know, we have 99 contaminated properties in the county. And this was discovered when we were applying for blight elimination grants. And we come across properties like the one in Village of Edwardsburg. The homeowner or the owner of that former gas station would like us to demolish it, but there's underground gas tanks, and there's also an oil pit in the basement with a hydraulic lift. So it's not just an easy, let's demolish it.
Yeah.
We actually have to address the environmental contamination that's there. And that is a barrier for him to develop that property.
Yeah.
He's had for sale signs on it forever.
Nobody wants it.
And nobody wants it because of that. So we have a team that is discussing this with the Brownfield group out of Kalamazoo. I'm pretty encouraged. I did ask for an update on that today. They, ultimately, the responsibility on that site is the owner, but he can't afford it. He's in
A nursing home.
He's in a nursing home, that's right. So they may be able to waive his responsibility and then step in and help to take care of the environmental remediation that needs to take place there. But that's how this got exposed, through that process. That's one of 99 contaminated sites in the county. So getting this assessment grant will be a great tool for our Brownfield group to indeed start addressing those contaminated sites.
And then the more we spend, we say we spend this, just like any other grant, you spend all of it. If we apply again, is it a possibility we'll get more?
Oh, exactly.
Closer to
You
that
do have up to 4
500,000.
years to spend this money. And of course, the Brownfield would have to decide how we're gonna do it, because a lot of these are privately owned properties, so you might want a partnership with those, maybe the owner pays 50% of it, and they use the grant for the other. I mean, there's ways to make this work. I've seen a couple different models, but it's definitely a good start. It's something that we need to do in the county, is start addressing these
300 grand will go quick.
barriers.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a perfect example, you know, that old gas station is that, you know, there are a lot of times in the uniqueness of the brownfield sites is that it is prime for possible development. But from a developer standpoint, when you look at the extra cost that's gonna go into, you know, dealing with the contamination in the underground storage tanks, things like that, it can be cost prohibitive, and it can go, well, the math just doesn't add up for us to develop the site. So that's where brownfield comes in, is being able to kind of find additional funding to say, hey, we can offset some of those costs and really make a difference in terms of making that more viable for a developer to pursue.
And that site has some definite hazards to it. I've got a letter here from the Edwardsburg Museum Group. They've given me 2 letters. The Village of Edwardsburg's given me a letter. And it's all basically, please help us, because they are very concerned that that museum is going, the building is a hazard, subject to vandalism, even arson. They feel that it could catch fire and that museum would be lost.
Yeah.
So there's.
I know they're concerned.
So, if it's at 3, would you have enough funds to take care of all 99 sites?
I mean, 500,000 would definitely go farther, but 300,000 would be a good start.
Good question.
All right. Any opposition to moving that forward? All right, we'll move that forward, and after that, we've almost been here 3 hours, and I'm seeing the wrong colors going across my eyes, so right now it's 18:47, 8, 9, 51, 52, 18:52, we'll come back.
We're taking a break.
gonna get back going? We are gonna get back going? All right. Letter Delta, District Court Collections Clerk. I'm gonna start by speaking on this because Judge Beeler, during her presentation with MERS, had expressed that if we don't have a collections clerk, we don't get paid. And didn't you all go through some hiring process or delays?
Yeah, it was posted in July and then we interviewed, but then we heard that we were gonna have to cut positions, so we paused everything.
Right, and then if we didn't bring this now, you'd have to pause it again.
Well, we just hope to be able to, it is paused right now, but we need to fill it because we can't, do that work.
Right.
But
And then I think.
if you don't want us to, that's okay too, but
No,
it's the
that one brings in
collections.
money. We need the collection. We need that
And
money.
I have some numbers to tell you what we were collecting and now what we're not collecting, so it's impacting things.
Sure.
You all want to hear that? The numbers?
Sure.
All right, I guess that's not unanimous. Nobody else is saying them, but I'd like to hear it.
Sure. They gave them to me, so I brought them for you, so. Yeah, so, our outstanding receivables have grown since we haven't been collecting. Our receivables were at $1,666,555. Not gonna tell you the cents, as of June 30th, and that's when the position became open. And, those collections grew by almost 13,000 as of July 31st, 5,000 as of August 31st, and 23,000 as of September 30th, so we're up to 41,000, so. We're having people do a little bit of collection as they can along with their other duties, but it's just something that it takes sustained activity on to be able to really make a dent into it, because it involves mailers, et cetera.
And I would say that because our trend is normally that we refer things to the appropriate committee. This one, it wasn't a we, it was me. I did not, because of Judge Beeler saying that it was a form of revenue for the county. So I just made a decision as chair to move this one forward and not bring it to a committee. And it was a question asked, well, we're not being consistent. And I think in the beginning, we said we'd have a couple of times where we had case by case. This is one that I took case by case. But from moving forward, my recommendation, not decision as chair, but recommendation for the board is to continue that case by case basis, or send everything that's not an emergency, send it to the appropriate committee for transparency and to follow our own rules, unless anybody has a better idea.
So I understand the committee that you're referring to could potentially be the salary committee.
Yeah, it would be the salary committee.
And I'm just wondering out loud, just if it's best to go to salary committee, or should we just bring it straight to the committee of the whole? And I'd love to love to hear what other people think. I personally think it should just come directly to the committee of the whole.
All of them, or
any position?
Any positions. Oh.
Well, and that's why when I made my request to Matt on Tuesday of last week, I put both of my positions that I wanted and asked for them to be put on the agenda for today, because when we had all met for the budget, I had asked the question, so we'll bring it to the cow and then you all look at it and decide if it moves on or not, and that's what we'll do, right? And so that was why I did it the way I did it. I'm happy to follow whatever process you tell me to follow, but I'd like to know what the process is, and several electeds have asked me why mine's on the agenda and theirs is not. And I appreciate that Chair Jones put it on the agenda. I'm not trying to argue against myself. I just feel like, especially with the positions that were vacant, that we already were given permission to post, there's really not a lot for us to argue to a salary committee, because we already presented them to HR, to Matt, and to everyone before, so.
That was my reasoning of bringing it, putting
But
it here.
I don't know how you all want to do it, and I'm not trying to be disagreeable, I'm just trying to streamline things.
And other elected officials have presented it to us for the last 2 years. I dropped it. Yes, sir.
I would just say this, I think we've had some discussions on this over the last year, and I think the one thing that is important is consistency. So I think it's been a real challenge. I know that elected officials have come to me and said, hey, how do we go about doing this? And it has become a bit of a challenge in terms of articulating what that is, because there was a vacancy committee at one point that was utilized, and then that flowed into the salary committee, and then we made changes to that process, and it became a bit convoluted in terms of even me understanding exactly what we need to do. So I think I would take the position that I'm happy to work with the Board of Commissioners to help facilitate this in whatever manner the board sees fit. But I think the key is we just need to articulate whatever the process is and then make sure that everybody's on the same page. That way I know and elected officials know here's what we need to do, and then we can all kind of make sure that we're following those principles and processes in the right way.
Yes, ma'am.
And also, just because we've already gone through the cycle of, we had a vacancy committee and we said that that didn't work well because all we were doing was coming, presenting to that, and then having the same questions answered on a form we filled out, and we were like, why can't the administrator review those requests and bring them then to you guys? I mean, like, it just feels like we've got so many meetings, and I understand you don't wanna hear that from me, but I wanna work on my primary job, which is hearing cases. And I make time to come to every COW and every Board of Commissioner meeting that I possibly can, but to have to go to all these separate committees, and I don't like to send my second in charge to come for a position. I like to come because I like to answer questions and tell you why these positions are important. So I'm not speaking for the other electeds. If we are going to have to go to an outside thing, if we could please schedule it like before a COW or before a BOC so that we can not have to be scheduling all these extra meetings, because it becomes a little overwhelming, especially in the months that we have holidays and closures, because we've only got so many days we can do business for the people we serve, so.
I agree with Sam.
Yeah.
With one
Yeah.
thing personally, that when we get people coming to us, elected or non, we get a bunch of papers, numbers, facts, or what's considered facts and not facts, and then we have to make a decision, but then the numbers, specifically numbers, didn't go through Jen, and the administrative part didn't go through Matt, but it comes to us to make a decision. So if we allow it to come straight to the COW, could we say the packet goes to Matt first, to administration, and then.
Well, and I guess I thought that's what we were doing.
Well,
That was the reason we submitted with a proposed memo for Matt,
Right.
and we put in the numbers, and I got the numbers from data that actually Finance Director Renfro gave me for the budgets. Now, that data might not be, but it was the Excel spreadsheet that said what the particular positions cost.
That's why I didn't have
And
a
then-
problem putting it on
And then
here.
I expected that if it wasn't accurate, that he would talk to her.
Yeah.
I mean, I
That's-
wasn't claiming to know the finance side of it, but that's where I got the data.
That's exactly why I didn't have a problem with making a command decision, less lack of better words. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is, and we try to capture that in the insert, and is that kind of the financial analysis. I'm pretty certain that in most
And
cases,
that's
the Board of
important.
Commissioners is interested,
Yeah.
what is the budgetary
Yeah,
impact?
that's right.
Are there grants that are offsetting
Yeah.
these positions, things like that?
Yeah.
I think that would be really the key, is if the board can kind of say, well, what information do you want to have? Is it what the budget impact is? And as long as we know what that is, I
Yeah.
think we can work with elected officials
Yeah.
to make sure that we have that info there, and that it's been,
Right.
vetted and checked and before it comes.
I like that too, because
I like that.
all of our elected officials are super busy. All of, oh my God, like for real, all jokes aside, they're super busy, ain't got time to be coming to all these, meetings. So, but if they could get that packet to you and Jen for the financial, and then come here briefly, then we can make an educated decision. Because when I get overwhelmed with 20 minutes to a half an hour and then this arguing between Matt and Jen about this, we don't know what this is and that is, I'm lost. I don't even remember what we're talking about anymore. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because it allows us to then leave this meeting, not have made a decision. We've got so much time between this and the business meeting than to circle back with the department or anybody
Mhm.
Yeah,
who's
we have
affected and
questions.
talk to them if we have questions.
Yeah.
And then decide.
All right.
Talk to them when they're here.
Yes, ma'am. Jen, ma'am.
I was just gonna ask if we could actually do the budget adjustment in conjunction with it at the same time, that way I'm not bringing it later on too.
Perfect,
So,
perfect.
just going in the future, I would really like to do that, cause now what's gonna happen, like, for instance, if this gets passed tonight, then I'm gonna have to bring a budget adjustment later on, and we'll have to go through the same process, so it's gonna slow it down a little bit. I'd just like to do it all together if we can.
Yeah, I mean, well, and it's the cow, so I mean, I think what you're trying to say is that essentially if this were to go forward, we would then bring the budget amendment forward.
For this in
for
here.
the regular meeting.
Yeah.
So you'll see that
Yeah.
at the next meeting, but it'd be in relation to this, right?
And
Just knock it out at once.
yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
and I mean, I guess when you're giving them the position ahead of time, like I can get around whatever financial amount needed and what we'll need for that.
And I'm
budget
only
adjustment.
speaking for myself, but I feel that if we're bringing it to Matt, it's up to us to follow up then with him and say, do you have any questions, or are our numbers correct? And I did that, and
Yeah.
I believe the other electeds would. I mean, we're just trying to streamline things, because we're not trying to trick you or surprise you, we're trying to, you know, just bring you the information and keep it simple, so.
Well, if I don't trust you, I got bigger issues.
I got one more thing.
Yes, sir.
I would say that, you know, I think the one thing we could talk about, this is a great workshop item, is that if we want to look at the agenda process in terms of workflows, who's looking at things, timing of when we get items, because that plays a big factor, right? Right now, there really isn't a firm deadline. We try to, you know, put about Thursday at 5 o'clock, but if it's a really complex thing, getting it, you know,
Oh,
on
right.
Friday morning and having the packet done at
Right.
4 o'clock is difficult. So
Yeah.
maybe that's a good area of discussion
Yeah,
is,
it is.
you know, what is a good workflow in terms of how we approach the agenda cycle? And, you know, what is the deadline in terms of getting things submitted so that those appropriate checks and any vetting that needs to get done has appropriate time to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And now that we've got 5 out of the 6 elected officials, in the meantime, everything goes to you, to the admin, before it comes here. That way we don't get 3 trees to try to decipher to move something forward or not. And then a long explanation. So, all right. So, do we have any issue with moving item
I
Delta
just have a
forward?
question.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay, so, do we have an internal person that might be interested in this but can't because it hasn't been posted?
I mean, I doubt it, because it's the lowest pay grade, so it would be a lateral move, but
Oh, okay.
there's always a possibility, I
And
guess.
that was my next question.
And it would be wrong of me, though, to speculate, because
Yeah,
I can't
okay.
give preference.
Okay,
But it is a union position, so
I
it
saw
would be
that.
it would be posted to the union first. It was posted to them back in July,
Okay.
but we would post this updated posting.
right, okay.
I wouldn't
Thanks,
go,
Carol.
if it's the lowest paid one, no thanks. I'm staying
Well,
where I'm
I mean,
at.
and I don't mean to say like that is a
Yeah.
negative, but I'm
get
saying
it.
it's not something that would necessarily draw people that are paid higher to come do this entry-level work.
Okay.
But it could.
All right. Any-
Um,
Any more discussion on that? So we're gonna move it forward?
Move forward, yep.
All right. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Item Echo, well, you might, maybe courts fund transfer. That one's easy, though. That's that on base,
Yeah.
Yeah, did anybody have
Program.
any questions about that? Basically, I'm just agreeing that I would leave my juvenile probation officer position open.
Okay.
And not hire until we have this much money to be able to pay for the work that we need to get done, because it got carried over into this fiscal year. So it's the net cost to the county is 0.
yeah, it's always a
we can
good
move this
thing.
forward?
Move it forward. All right. Foxtrot, or F. I have no idea what RTA and CPLR grant, I forget.
Those are great things. There are
Yes,
raise
they are.
age and child
They
and
are.
parent legal representation grant funds.
There it
And they're
is.
basically monies that previously the county had to support all this work. And so it allows us to get this money, and so we are just establishing those line items based on the award we got.
Okay.
I just have a comment.
Yes, sir.
That
Yes,
the work
ma'am.
that these courts do is absolutely amazing.
Oh, yeah.
For the families of the county, it's great. And thank you.
Thank you.
John.
At my conference, just talking to some other finance directors, they were very shocked to hear how much grants our courts are getting.
Yeah.
A lot of times they are seeing it in other areas, and they were very shocked to hear that. And so I reached out to Judge Beeler and relayed that information to her. And everybody
Thank you.
seemed pretty excited, and maybe they would have their courts to get any more grants.
And that grant was already awarded.
Right.
Okay.
Well, we just needed you to say, yes, we
Yeah.
can take it, and then yes, fund those line items.
Yeah, please do. You up for golf? Or G, the letter G?
Yeah.
I'm in a military
The
mood
last one is
tonight.
all of our problem-solving courts, which I've told you about before, but it's basically our formal receipt of the numbers that they gave us. Including, we were so lucky, I told you, I think before, about the SAMHSA grant that we're doing. Judge Renfro is with St. Joe County, and that gives us a lot of money to help adult offenders, which is super awesome, because those SAMHSA grants are really hard to get. And the fact that we've gotten another one is really a credit to our team that is involved with the problem-solving courts. So that's also just funding those line items.
All right.
Yeah, and you'll notice that there's some highlights on 7 and 8 of that second page.
Yes.
If that's approved to go forward, then we'll work with Jennifer on getting the account numbers assigned.
Okay.
Line items and all that.
We had the approval to go forward before we got that, but we will do that for the regular meeting.
Okay.
Anybody any issues with that not moving forward? Or with it moving forward? All right.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. You're up, John.
Discussion of the ambulance service in Cass County. I think we had a pretty good meeting yesterday. We met with Matt on the ambulance service, and by the way, you can put me on your committee if you would, please.
Sure.
And I will do whatever I can do on that. So there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of meetings. I've attended a lot of meetings. And right now, we have an ambulance service up until, and this is for the city of Dowagiac, Wayne Township, and I think, and I don't remember the other, do you remember the other townships?
Part of Pokagon.
Pokagon?
Yes, and Silver Creek.
LaGrange,
LaGrange as
Yeah.
well.
Calvin.
So we have, right now, we have one ambulance for those counties, and it's really stressing everybody out.
Is it a ALS or a BLS?
It's ALS.
It's ALS?
Yeah. They're doing the best they can. The fire departments are kind of helping out a little bit. If they're getting, matter of fact, one call last night was somebody, I think it was an arrest, and so they called the fire department right away to get there to probably do CPR or whatever they could do while they're waiting for the ambulance. So anyhow, we were kind of discussing county millage, and we were kind of discussing that
I can give a little,
last night.
I can give a little info on that.
Sure, go ahead.
So, I think there's a good discussion to be had about what is the path forward. So obviously, I think what the authority's been looking at now is trying to figure out how do you find like a stopgap solution while you look at what a longer term option is. So, obviously having one ALS unit isn't ideal, but it's better than zero. And then as you start looking out further ahead, what are the best ways to approach this from, a county-wide perspective? And I think, obviously, I know that there's been some concern expressed over those local townships and local units that have services in place and are happy with those services. I think that a good model for us to look at, if there was some movement to wanting to look at this countywide, would be potentially our neighbors to the north in Van Buren County. We're trying to look at some numbers now and get a committee together to discuss this, but essentially what Van Buren County does is they do have a countywide millage that's assessed on all of the properties, but they do it, a real property, I guess rather, but it's based on a formula that is 60% taxable value and then 40% population. They divided the county up into districts. I believe there are 6 in Van Buren County. And they distribute the funds individually to those districts. So you have an option, if you're a district, to have an interlocal agreement, and that district is kind of that authority in that case, and say, we want to contract with, this entity or that entity, and that provides you that funding to be able to do that. The other option is, in Van Buren at least, is they have a contract direct with VBIMS in some cases for that district, and then the county pays that provider directly. Obviously in coordination with the district saying this is the service that we want. I think right now the biggest thing for us is looking at If it was a countywide millage, what would that take to actually provide the services that we need? What is that interplay in terms of the local units that are already accepted, whether it's a special assessment or an extra voted millage? What would the interplay be there? In most cases, you would probably want to ensure that the county millage would take the place of what the local millage would be. The question then becomes, is it possible that a countywide millage, when you start portioning it out to those local districts, could a countywide millage that's portioned out actually be maybe potentially lower than what you might see in one individual district? I think there was some discussion about how when you have kind of sharing amongst townships for those services, there can be some cost advantages there. Well, can we do that on a countywide level? But I think the one key is that right now, at least, the goal would not be to try to establish some sort of countywide, a service in that regard. It's not creating the Cass County EMS, at least right now. It would be looking at, trying to, as a countywide effort, whether funding in that way would make sense, and then distributing it to local units. Now, that's not to say you have to follow Van Buren County's example either. I mean, maybe the interlocal agreement is through the townships.
Would that be like augmenting what the existing programs?
I think in some cases it would, for example, if a local township already has a special assessment or an extra voted millage, if it went countywide, you would probably see essentially the county millage essentially remove what the local unit is and take the place of that. I think the purpose of the committee is to kind of evaluate what are the possible options there. And truly, we understand we're talking about 15 different local units. Everybody has different viewpoints on what the best course might be. Trying to get as many folks together to say what works, what doesn't work, and how can we approach this from a macro perspective to fill the needs of what we need for everyone and ensure that everybody's satisfied with what the end result is.
Are the townships interested in passing their own millages?
Well, I think that's another part of the equation. Townships would have a couple different options. Some special assessments are one avenue, extra voted millages are another avenue. It really just kind of depends on the mix of what each local unit is exploring and trying to do. I know some of the units have expressed an interest to explore this from a countywide standpoint. I think the biggest thing is trying to figure out what that mix is of what satisfies our objectives and kind of get everybody together to say, yep, that's the way forward. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't think that this is some easy thing that we're gonna solve tomorrow. I think it's gonna take a lot of effort and a lot of coordination to figure out what really does work. And it's gonna be a process, but I think it is imperative that we start looking at this and figuring out what does that look like, and trying to at least offer some support, on the planning side with particularly the authorities that are dealing with the challenge right now. What can we do? How does this work? Even if a countywide solution isn't the option, we can still work to try to help those local units and those authorities figure out what may work.
So
try to provide resources.
With the areas affected, instead of messing with the ones that, because anything the government touches, come on. But those that are affected, like my township, if I call 911 from my house right now, it's gonna be about 15 minutes before somebody gets there. So if we were to not help the ones that are happy with theirs and just county help the ones that are affected, I'm wondering if the other townships would be like, hey, well, you're helping them guys, why ain't you helping us? Well, you're happy with what you got.
And I think that's where this starts to get a bit complex.
It should be like
is that you
opt in
if
or
you're gonna
opt
do it
out.
countywide,
Yeah.
you would have to have a countywide millage of some sort, and then those funds could be distributed. Maybe when you look at it, my guess is that probably with the local units, what they assess or what the extra voted millage is varies. So you might have, I know Ontoa, for example, I think has 2.75 mils that's voted locally for fire and EMS. Maybe another unit might have 1.25, maybe that is 0.75 somewhere else. So trying to figure out, how does that work on a macro scale is not necessarily the easiest, but I think that's the idea of getting everybody at the table and saying, okay, how does this work and what might be a viable pathway.
And remember, when I don't know, you weren't here. Before you were here, when I first got elected commissioner, Waukegan Township Fire Department came to me and said, hey, man, we need a new engine. And I brought it to the previous administration, and they were like, and it wasn't no hit on anybody, but they're like, no, that's a privately owned, for-profit organization. The county has a problem with giving them money. You know, we've got a lot of non-township-owned EMS and fire departments. You know, what does that look like? We're giving people money from the county, and they're making money, you know, off of our millage. You know, that's not cool. You know, but would that be part of the language of the millage? You can't use this or something like that, or?
I mean, I think if you were gonna do that, and a good example is Van Buren's, and I'm gonna try to share this, I haven't had a chance yet, but we'll share this with all of the commissioners and anybody else interested, I guess, is that Van Buren County, I think, has a pretty hefty policy in terms of their ambulance millage, and here's how it works, here's how everything is distributed, here's the formulas that are used. You know, they put a lot of planning and effort into that. I certainly could share that with everyone so you could get an idea of how they approached it. And I guess the one thing I would mention too is that, you know, it's not, there isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all sort of approach. I mean, what works in Van Buren may not necessarily be the preference here in Cass County, but I think we're kind of starting, you know, from something we know where it is working and saying, okay, well, what do we like from that, what don't we like, and then trying to get a group together to say, okay, let's try to bring some sort of a proposal together that might make sense.
Then if you do that, it's still not up to us, it's up to the voters. You know, if it don't pass the voters, then whoops, good luck passing any more millages, especially in places like them.
Yeah, and that's why this is not, you know, a short-term solution. I mean, something like this is something that takes a lot of time and effort and planning. So, you know, this is not, you know, gonna alleviate the issues next week or, you know, even in 2 months. I mean, you're talking a much longer time frame, but, you know, I think it is important to start considering what the route would be.
But we need to start.
Yes.
So that's what that committee is for then, isn't it? So with this, it's nothing really to move forward to our business meeting, but you're gonna go on to his committee, and then as needed, you all will bring us reports on what's needed, what the facts are, and share that between commissioners and the public.
At these meetings, are all the townships there?
There'll be some representation.
Yeah, I mean, I think essentially we do a quarterly township leaders meeting where we invite all of the township supervisors and folks from the county to kind of come together and talk about, you know, issues that are facing the county as a whole. And we had this discussion last night, and we kind of posited to everybody there, you know, we were looking at this, we were trying to form some sort of a group to talk about it more. Often, if anybody's interested, to let me know, and we would work on trying to form some sort of a task force maybe in terms of trying to gather materials, talk about what plans might be. So, you know, we'll of course extend an invitation out to all of the township supervisors as well, that anybody who is interested in looking at this and joining this, even if maybe you're not the most in favor of it, maybe that would be a helpful thing. You know, if you're saying, hey, you know, we have something that we really like and we want to make sure that whatever's done doesn't infringe upon that, that's a good viewpoint for us to see as well. How would you approach it in a way that works with the current system that they have?
I have a couple of comments I'd like to make real quick. So I represent 2 townships that do have EMS and 1 that doesn't. But is this something that we as a county should be taking away from the townships as a decision? Just one thing to think about. I mean, should we be taking on this decision and then taking it away from townships? 2, if we do something like this, I firmly think that there needs to be a way that townships that are covered can file for exemption, or a way that, because they're already happy. And then the third thing would be to really consider all options. So like Mason is here tonight, but Porter, both of them are more than willing to allow other townships to come in and look at how theirs is set up. So if that could be considered as well, that's what I would recommend.
I think it's important that as this committee gets put together and the townships are included on it, that also members from like SMACAs or some are also invited to come and join this discussion to understand what is working well and maybe generate some ideas.
And if you need any information from SMACAS, I have Brian's information I can give you, and you can call him and talk to him personally. I talked with him personally, and he laid out a plan how he saw Cass County entering into something like this. And I liked what he said, but it doesn't mean that everybody's gonna accept that, so.
Yeah, and I guess one thing to touch on too is with the question about local control. That's obviously something that's really important, I think contemplated very well, and what Van Buren County's example is that, you know, the county in their example does not have the authority to say, well, you're gonna have this provider, like it or not. I mean, I think it's up to each individual district at that point to determine what's in their best interest, so, I mean, I think that's really a big question would be, what would those districts look like? Can the county do it maybe on a township by township basis? Does that make sense? You know, but these are a lot of the questions we have to look at, but it wouldn't be the county at all dictating what local units would choose. I mean, in Van Buren County's example, you know, the local units do get those funds and then determine what they choose to do with them, whether that's entering into an agreement with SMACIS or any other provider. You know, that's their prerogative.
Yeah.
The problem is, and I hope that you guys realize this, is that Dowagiac folded up, Pride Care folded up, private individual ambulance services. Do you want that? Do you want another private ambulance service? Now, the ones that are working in the town, those are townships. They've got their own. These other entities contracted out. Wayne Township contracted with Dowagiac for ambulance service. They were left with nothing. And so did some of the other townships as well. And the same way with Pride Care. They all contracted with Pride Care, and Pride Care went under. So we have to bear in mind, do we want that to happen again? And I don't want that to happen again. I want something that's gonna be 10, 20, 30, 50 years down the road. Not just 3 to 5 years or 10 years.
Well, something to think about is, I mean, in these townships, many of them have their own fire department, but they don't have an ambulance service. Well, like in the example of Porter and Mason, they share one fire department and one EMS. Why have, so that you could fund a fire department between two townships and have what was going to a fire department fund an EMS. I mean, just as a thought process. I mean, and then that's something that has great longevity.
And we do that. Wayne Township Fire Department is funded by Valenia and LaGrange.
Sheriff?
Before we say it's all roses and Porter, there are times they're not in service because they don't have manpower.
You're right, yeah.
So it's not, you gotta remember, when we start talking about municipal-owned ambulance, the reason those all went down is because they couldn't keep up with the training and experience to keep people, to run those ambulances the way they should have been. So just make sure you go back in time like you just did, but by the same token, there's a reason that'll happen. That's why the Dowagiac had to fold. That's why many ambulance services had to fold over there because they couldn't keep up with the training and experience. It's so expensive.
Well, just like Brian said from SMACIS, there's a shortage of EMTs and that, and they are actually offering to put people through these classes and actually even pay them $15 an hour while they're doing these schoolings.
Sure they do.
Because they're shorthanded, so it's,
And they have 15 in the class right now.
We got good input from,
I don't know, Ricky's gonna have to show me some time slips on that. When Porter was out of service, I need to see that, I do. Absolutely. The second thing is I thought we made it plain, leave SEPSA out of this. You can do whatever you want with the other folks. If they didn't get proactive and take care of this issue long ago until this happened, that's on them. Don't put that on us. We don't want it. We are happy with what we have. From what I understand, what are you talking about, 1 mil? I heard it voiced around, 1 mil? I can tell you right now, from being on the board, it's not gonna work. If it does, your service areas are gonna be so large. We get 2 mils, and it's all we can do to fund our ambulance and fire and service the 2 townships.
got it.
Now, when you run out, when you do that, when you run out so big with a service district, then what you're doing is asking us to continue to do what we're doing now, and that's to go outside our service
Right.
district, to take care of folks that aren't paying our millage.
Right.
So if you want to do those folks that don't have service, fine, I don't care. Leave us alone, give us a way to opt out of this.
Gotcha. Yes, sir.
Well, and just to clarify, I guess, is that, and I'm not arguing that Van Buren County's example is what the solution is here, but I think it's important when you look at that, Covert has its own service, South Haven has its service. I mean, so I think even in that example, it isn't about trying to say that local units couldn't have that service. I think in a lot of cases, essentially what you're talking about is that whatever the special assessments or the extra voted millages are at the local level, the county would just assess that countywide, and then those funds would still be distributed back. So if you had, for example, 2 mills and the millage was 2 mills countywide, you'd still get those funds back to be able to utilize, but you'd begin assessing that across maybe municipalities that weren't assessing that before, and that would help provide that. So I mean, it's just, again, I'm not saying that that's the answer. I think that's the whole idea here, is to explore this and figure out what is the answer that might work.
Yes, ma'am.
I just hope that, you have meetings that are widely advertised and that everyone knows about, because I love the law and I love Michigan, because in Michigan, we have a system of government where we gave our townships the most power, because the thought was locally people should have more control over things. And I'm not saying anybody here, this is great that you're gonna brainstorm and bring together ideas, but I hope that you get every township and lots of people from every township at the table, because there's a lot of people that have knowledge about what goes on in their townships, and then you're gonna have to talk about the fairness of doing it the ways, because I've heard, over the years, different things about, that concept of having that countywide millage and then how that ends up panning out. So I'm not for or against it, I'm not trying to advocate, but I hope it's widely advertised when you hold these meetings, because really, I mean, having been a former township attorney, township people, they really attend their meetings well usually, and they wanna have a say in these things. And so if we're gonna do it as the county to help, we need to make sure we get all of them at the table and not say, well, we told the leaders. I mean, it's more than just the leaders, it's the residents, because they're the ones that are impacted by a millage. And so if we don't have support at the township level, why in the world would we take a countywide millage out there? I mean, so I guess I'm just saying practically, because I don't like to spend money, and a millage costs money up front, which the clerk and other people know more about than I do, but I mean.
This board's history and countywide stuff ain't been very successful.
Well, I think from a practical standpoint, I mean, this has been an issue that's been talked about for probably 20, 30 years. And I think the key to this is that in those instances, there wasn't a way to find some sort of an agreement with all townships that worked. And this would be the same way. I mean, the county cannot preempt that local decision-making process. So this only works if everybody agrees. If not, there really isn't a path to say, well, we're gonna do this for 5, but not the other 10. I mean, I think the only way forward is to find some sort of a way to work with everyone. And if we can't, then I guess we can't. It would then, at that point, fall on those local units to revert to their own extra voted millages or special assessments.
Jerry.
Well, I just want to say that the reason it's failed in all these townships, the residents are not paying enough money to support the ambulance services. And that's the big problem they have. And the fear that I would have with what's being projected is if we tried to pass a countywide millage, I don't think it would pass. I don't think our residents would support it.
All right, that's what I've heard.
I agree with Jerry, and I just have to wonder then what is the answer at that point, So.
Well, you know what?
Townships.
Smack us. That serves you. Bill Kasperzak, he's the supervisor of Howard Township. When we were at one of the county leader meetings, he said, you know what? We got together and we did this and we did that. And he said, and I'll help you. I'll help you. I'll help you do it because you can do what we did. Nobody took him up on it.
That was years ago he said that. And
If he said it years ago, he said it just about 3 months ago too.
Recently too.
So, I mean, so it can be done because Smackus is pretty successful. And they don't have a millage.
Even if a millage were to come true, like that would be when? would be voted on?
We have February election, we could call them a special election, we will definitely have August and November elections. And there are some townships that already have ambulance millages in place
Yes.
that pay
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
And they ain't gonna vote for no more money to go out of their pocket.
I agree.
No, I mean, I think the idea would be is, at that point, exploring whether a countywide assessment would take the place of those.
Right.
You know, but again, I mean, a lot of that is, can we find an agreement with all of the townships that makes any sense? If we can't, then, well, I guess that then dictates the direction forward is at the entirely at the local.
I mean, townships that were covered by Pride Care that have voted millages.
Yes.
Yeah.
Volenia has a voted millage, but so far to this date, their millages went to the Wayne Township Fire Department. So I don't know how much they'll take out of that for ambulance service.
There's the answer right there. Pokagon, like my township, can they do a vote on their own to do a separate just for Pokagon Township only?
Yep.
That's the answer right there. Leave it at the township level, and then the affected area, the ones that are happy with they don't have to even do nothing because they're good.
That's how SEPSA,
They're
they hold their own
good.
vote.
Yeah, they're good,
Yep, they did, because they're an authority. That's right.
and we
Yep.
stay out of it.
No, and I think I can say, like, I've had a couple conversations, say, with like Life EMS, and I'm not, again, saying that they're an option, but, you know, one thing that he kind of brought up is that, I mean, for obviously the established providers, that's, you know, a simpler premise because they're already here, but if you've got this township that wants to contract with this provider, and then this township isn't on the same page, I mean, it's not, in some cases, economically feasible to have one township have just one service. I mean, in some cases, having a geographical footprint that included, you know, 4 or 5 different townships might be more economical in terms of economies of scale and things like that. And so that's, I guess, part of the idea here is to really just take a holistic look at it and figure out, is there a path forward in any way?
Yes.
And that's really what we need to do, just look at it.
Yeah, I mean, and the county is just simply trying to help. I mean, you know, we're not trying to dictate anything or run anything, it's just how can we try to help facilitate these conversations?
Sam?
Does the committee really need to be put together in order just to help facilitate a meeting with the township supervisors and SMACAs and all these other providers? If there's any involvement from the county standpoint, I think it should just be helping get everybody together in the same room to talk. But I don't know if that's really what the committee's being formed for, or if there's really need
Not our
for it.
committee, that's their committee. We're not having a committee.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, we don't have no committee.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is just a separate, you know, discussion that we're having. I mean, I think there's been several townships that have requested, you know, some investigation into whether a countywide option might make sense. And so that's part of it, is just trying to assist the townships in hosting sort of discussions on the topic and what may work. I mean, it's not any official action on the part of the board. I mean, we're just trying to offer assistance.
I think we've talked enough.
Yep.
All right, keep us abreast there. Jim and Matt, JM.
We will.
All right.
Yes.
Cass County Transportation Authority funding request. We got a thing I passed off from Gary Bundle. Jeez. And one of the questions that I think that still didn't get answered was how many employees. But he said, and where was the current money going? And from my discussions with Jerry Bundle was, it's mostly to the salaries and benefits of the employees, just to keep good people. And that's the hardest thing, is to find people to work and attract people to work. We know that, you know. And then how many employees? I think that was the only question that I didn't have time enough to ask you, man.
Okay, total staffing. Thank
Yeah.
you for this opportunity, Mr. Chair. Total staffing, 15. Includes the full and part-time, mostly part-time. We only have 6 full-time employees. And the salary and benefits does, on a monthly basis, comprise about half of our expenses.
Yeah.
40-some%. Lady, you did have one other question, though, that needed to be addressed, and that was the expiration of the idea of acquiring authority property in exchange for the operating support.
I'm gonna talk about it a little bit. Or you want-
I can go and
Okay.
you can supplement if you.
All right.
So yesterday, this question was put to our board of directors, and they made a decision and had the following statement, and I quote, "It is the intent of the CCTA to transfer the title of 400 East State Street to Cass County for the operational support of the CCTA, so that CCTA can continue to fully operate through the millage election in February 2024 and subsequent tax collections. The expectation is that Cass County will then lease the property to CCTA for $1 per year," end quote. There's another piece of late breaking news though that as of 15:30 this afternoon.
Nice, military time.
that nobody, because of the timing, did not have an opportunity to share with everyone. And that was the answer from the Michigan Department of Transportation as to whether we could actually do this. And the response from our project manager is that this would require the approval of the Federal Transit Administration.
Oh.
So, do you hear bureaucracy?
Good
Do you
luck
hear red
there.
tape?
We'll send Vic.
And so any sale would require their approval. It's kind of a black box process as he understands it, but a couple of requirements that are known is that the FTA would have to approve, and one of their factors that they would consider would be based upon an appraisal of the property. So I'm sure they're looking for fair value of the property. And the other factor that goes into that is the depreciation on these properties is 40 years. So, as we had discussed about the former dentist's office, it was just acquired in 2018, so there's a lot of book value there left. That statement that I mentioned earlier was approved by a roll call vote with the administrator abstaining, and so it was unanimous with that abstention.
So if the feds say that we gotta apply through them and say we don't have the money and it doesn't pass, y'all go under, we gonna get it anyway. And then what happens then? Does the Fed, do they come in and take it? Or, I don't know if I can explain it right. So if we wanna buy it from you all, and you all wanna do it, but we gotta apply or go through the FTA, right?
The transaction, as far as the sale of the property, would have to be approved.
Approved through them. So if you all don't get any money, there's no more CCTA. So
That's correct.
So then they don't have nothing to do with it at that point. Or what happens if you all don't get no money?
Well, then we'd have to go through a liquidation process on the property.
And then I don't know if that would get rid of the FTA. You know what I'm saying?
No, they would still.
They would still
be
involved and draw it out even longer at that point.
Yes.
God.
Whereas we're out of cash next month without consideration from the commission.
I don't think that necessarily that if the transit authority were to fold, that the county would automatically inherit that property either. I mean, I don't think that's how it would work. Assets
That was
forcibly
really
liquidated. So that was kind of the idea behind this, was looking at, when we considered the request, was there some pathway where, for the county's contribution, there could be some offsetting measure where essentially the county would have property that would hold a collateral, value in the case of the funding that would be provided, so that if, for example, the millage campaign weren't to pass, that the county would have some interest in property that, could potentially be used in some way in the future to help with that. We weren't aware, obviously, until today of the extra hurdles in terms of doing that, but we're trying to be creative in terms of finding different avenues for the county to consider the investment in transit, with trying to protect some of that potential investment too.
So what do we need to do here as far as business meetings are here? Is this the funding request? Is this moving it forward to the business meeting to decide whether or not we will give them the funding, right?
Well, I guess, Gary, you would have a better feel for the budget overall, when you look at the transit budget right now, at what point would you say that if the funding isn't provided, that you can't continue to operate further? And I guess, is it something where there's a little bit more time to figure out whether this process for the land makes any sense, or does the decision need to come in 2 weeks or else?
Yes, we'll run out of cash next month.
Okay.
And you told us that
Yeah, month.
a couple months ago.
Yes, we kicked the can down the road by
Right.
exhausting our rainy day fund
Right.
this month.
Well, and I think from the Transit Authority's perspective, the board at least, and again, I didn't vote, obviously, Director Bundle noted that I abstained, but I can speak, I guess, on behalf of the board, is that the statement of intent was designed to say that if there were extra hurdles or, processes that had to be done to make that happen, that it was the, unanimous intent of the board to try to do that.
Mhm.
So I mean, I think that was the idea, was that if the board would consider, looking at this from the perspective of, with the idea that this transaction would take place, if there was additional time to make it happen, would the board still consider providing, because the funding wasn't provided in one lump sum. It was periodic, so would the county consider, well, we would provide one, tranche of funding, so to speak, while the board continues to work towards this, knowing that the Transit Authority has already approved for that to happen? I mean, so there's a couple different pathways, I guess.
Jen, did you see if we had the money for that? If it was even possible?
There's fund balance.
Would it be an
You guys
increase
are
to the
aware
budget?
of the balance.
Yeah. That's a
Do
sore
you have any
subject.
plans if that millage fails? What are your thoughts process going forward? Because I mean, at that point, our funding is done and you no longer have a millage. Do you know, I mean, we could not continue to support that then after that point. I'm just trying to speak
Right.
going to the future, like the people have spoken, we don't want our tax money to go to it, we would no longer be able to fund it. Do you have plans in place in case that millage fails?
Liquidation.
May I speak?
Yes.
I think that we're in the 11th hour, and we just were dealt another blow this afternoon. And, the public transportation will not survive beyond next month without intervention. And so the intervention we're asking for is really not quite, it's a different ballgame now, because the intentions of the board are invalid because of changes. Am I correct?
You have to speak up, Christian.
Yeah. So, sorry about that. I think what.
Yeah, I heard you, but moving on, you don't have to start over, but right where you left off.
Okay.
Not being funny, but I get it.
Well, I was answering his question, what is the plan from this point? And the plan is there is not a plan. This is the end of the road.
This is it. All right. Monica.
I want to make sure that you factored in the cost of paying for the election in your request, your funding request.
Yes, the timing of those disbursements did accommodate that with the estimate that you have provided, and that number is put into our cash forecast.
So we'll give
for
you
March.
money to pay us that.
For March, yes. But this is, to Commissioner Lee's comment and concern, this is one of those things that, you could make that decision that the people have spoken and they don't want to pay for this. But it's also, forgive the analogy, but this is a Joni Mitchell type thing. You don't know what you got till it's gone. And there will be significant public.
There's a lot of people that depend on that.
Yes.
But the WAJAC is still there. You said that they're completely funded. So there is hope that if the WAJAC's there, I don't want to speak out of place, but that might be able to, if there's something that the people have spoken, so to speak, that they might be the ones that can pick up and, you know, benefit from taking on the extra work, you know?
The Wajak is funded through their own.
Their own millage? Oh, so that ain't nothing they can help with?
No.
Oh,
No.
that's why I didn't want to speak out of turn. Yes,
I do
ma'am.
have a couple questions. When is the election? Is that the presidential election you're going?
Yes, we're waiting to find out when legislative session ends.
Oh, 'cause it has to
It'll
be so
either
many
in
days.
February or March.
Okay, so would they have to pay for that to be on that election?
Yes, because it's the presidential primary.
Uh-huh.
So we have to have a Republican, a Democratic, and then
sure.
nonpartisan ballot. So they
Okay.
will have to pay for the nonpartisan ballot.
Okay, so,
But to that issue though, it was the
It
clerk's
is the
estimate that would be
cheapest.
the least expensive.
oh, yeah.
By far.
Yeah, I can see that. So,
Yes.
and then, I read, because I was doing some research as well, that in 2024, public transit is gonna get a 19 point something increase. Oh, a little more than 19% increase. Have you heard of that? Is
Is that from state funding?
yes, from the state?
No, what we're aware of is for fiscal year 2024, the formula reimbursement is 34.58%.
Uh-huh.
The federal goes down in 2018 from 36 to 18.
Okay. Because I did, and I'll look at that again, and I'll send it to you, Jerry, if I know I have it. So, and my other question is that, okay, so you're gonna go for more than slightly more than a quarter mil, okay? Why not a quarter mil?
We figured that with the demand that exists and the programming that was recommended as a result of the transit study that was completed in 2021 regarding our local service, that was what was needed to be able to accommodate those services, which would include, for example, fixed route service that would go from Edwardsburg onto a township into Indiana, so on and so forth. There was about 3 routes that were recommended.
Okay, so I understand. However, I do have to make this comment. I'd rather see you go for a quarter mil and get it. I'd rather see you go for a quarter mil and get it. Because I have my doubts about 29.
That's,
And we do deal with that. Okay.
yeah, I hope, I wasn't like, I hope you fail, I just
Oh,
was,
no.
I was trying to be realistic.
No.
about it. Yeah, I was trying to be realistic about
And
that.
I don't,
Yeah.
and I agree 100%. I want to see the transit continue, but I just don't know how we can do it,
Jen has a,
I just had a question, is there any change of how you will be going forward with business? It seems like the model's not really.
Yes, we, just to survive until, we will cut back service effective November 1st. We will not be operating Cass County Public Transit on Mondays.
I'm just talking about, if you get this millage, are you going to operate in the same way you have been operating? Or there something you're going to look at to, cost savings? Or, is there any change to your programs that you're looking at?
We're already in an austerity program, and we are looking at implementing measures to increase our efficiency. Some of those things will take some investment, though, to be able to realize, because some of these things are supported by technology. One of those things is automated dispatching and automated scheduling, so that we increase the efficiency of our driver usage and our vehicles. So reduce both the labor and our operating costs for equipment.
Are you only going to continue to have the buses, or have you considered microtransit? I'm just curious.
No funding for microtransit yet. And so far, we haven't identified any demand for it. It's something I would very much like to do, though. We're holding on to a vehicle in the hope that we can do microtransit. Thank you, that's a great question, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Have we looked at similarly situated counties size-wise that have a transit authority like we do to see what they do, to see whether we're commensurate with what they do or what their business model is, or like to see if we could learn, or, I don't know, like.
We do that constantly.
Okay.
Yes.
And so have we adapted then what we do to, based on that information, or what has occurred?
Interestingly enough, except for the extreme manual, laborious, and paper-driven processes that we have, we measure up favorably against similar situated transits. It's difference being that they, all but three of us have some public support. In the form of a millage and.
Well, I guess I was more asking, like, are they in a similar situation where they're facing shutdown? And if they're not, did we analyze why not, like in terms of their cash flow?
We did, I mean, and that was actually part of the study that was done through transit, but I mean, I think the biggest factor is that when you look at Van Buren counties and neighboring county, that, you know, would be a fairly comparable option, but the vast majority of those have some sort of millage that's funding the operation. So that's the biggest difference, is without that sort of public funding component, there are not a lot of other examples out there that have been able to be successful in that environment.
Thank you for answering the question. I just wondered, because it's just one of those things where you don't know the way a millage is gonna turn out. And we could end up, you know, the county could make this investment, and then the millage could fail, and we'd be in the same exact spot. So I'm just trying to understand, you know, and I'm not trying to advocate for or against it. I'm just trying to understand what was the process to figure out how we're gonna right the ship, so to speak, so.
Yes, and that's a very valid concern and a great question. The thing that it does buy us is it buys the people who depend upon this more time to plan for some kind of alternative.
And that was the idea behind the property transfer, was that, you know, it was somewhat, you know, hedging in the sense that, you know, however that turned out, there was some, you know, protection of that investment funds. Now, it didn't sound like you said that that was impossible. I mean, from what you heard today, did they give any sort of a timeline on what something like that would take? I mean, obviously appraisal takes some time, but I guess I would still be interested to know what are those steps to make this happen, and who do we need to talk to figure out how that would work?
I'm paraphrasing, but to MDOT's assessment, it's a black box. And with FTA potentially taking, you know, it could take months.
There's a question of what a black box means. What does that mean?
It means there's something with some machinations that you don't understand what's in there and how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have my concerns on this actually passing, and we have fiscal responsibility to all the taxpayers in Cass County. And it's a big gamble on our end when we don't have assurance at the end. And I was excited when I first heard about the idea of potentially taking over the property, so we have some sort of collateral. But now, you know, unfortunately, I hear that there's more hurdles, and we are running out of time at this point. Have we done a public hearing on this subject yet? Have we heard from people? Could we, if we're gonna vote on it at the next meeting, could we put that on the agenda to at least allow people from the public to come in and discuss it?
Yeah.
If it goes forward to the next meeting?
Yeah, we can do that.
A public hearing would be an option, sure.
Yeah, announce it. See how many people come. And then all those people that depend on it, they should be here.
Yeah, it's their money.
Is Southwest Heritage still using services for you guys?
No, they have their own fleet.
Yeah, I see their name on the buses now going past my house. Ma'am, you had something?
I just wondered about this millage in terms of, since like Dowagiac has their own, so this millage that would be passed would just be for the people that are in the service area that's not in the DART service area?
Well, it'd be everything except for
It would take the
Dowagiac.
place of the
What?
Dowagiac.
Oh,
Oh, it's taking the place of the Dowagiac
At least
millage?
partially.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't be able to fully repeal theirs, but they would be able to reduce theirs.
Yeah, I think it would be reduced by whatever the county millage was. I think that's how it was working. Kevin was working with us on that.
Okay, I guess I don't
So
understand that.
what, then where would their village go to?
So I'm paying for Dowagiac then, if that passes?
And they already have their own village? So what happened, I don't understand that.
Yeah, we just talked about that, the prior topic.
Yeah, we did.
Right.
Yeah, we did.
Like, why would I think of that?
Well, there's a kettle of fish, right?
Mhm.
It seems like, well, we're gonna need information on that too for the public to know, because they'll wanna know that question.
Mm.
Who is using transportation? Because you've lost Woodlands, you've lost Southwest, right? Like, who are you transporting besides the Dowagiac Dart? I'm just curious who's using the transportation.
Handicapped people,
Uh-huh.
people with disabilities rather. A lot of people we transport are elderly. And those things were included, which you didn't have access to. And then there's people, especially people with disabilities and younger people who use us to get to work. That demand is expected to grow in addition to the elderly population. I had a rider last week that I picked up on the day I was driving, and she quoted one of her associates that said, "Transit gives me life. It's their entire independence. It's the only way they can get out of the house. You know, they're the person that can't drive, you know, because of, you know, age or other, you know, disability issues, and that's how they get to the COA."
That's why I asked about the micro, honestly. I mean, I have an aunt who's mentally and physically handicapped. She's used Cass County transportation, but I know a lot of that, when it was Lewis Cass, it was kind of worked through there as well. And then later on, transportation was transporting her to jobs and stuff. But I also know when that bus would come pick it up, that it's not ever full or close to full. From when I was putting her on the bus, that was years ago. I'm just curious what it's like now, and if those buses are being filled up, or if we're driving around a bus with 2 people on it.
It's the latter. And
And
that's because of.
unfortunate. We're operating like we're a big city.
We're in the process of downsizing our fleet, so.
Yeah, like
that's-
13 buses,
That's
I
being
think.
addressed.
Yeah.
And
You're next.
there's many complications to that make it not a simple question or answer. But the capital funding cycle is at least 5 years for vehicles. And so all this was ongoing. This fleet size was developed when we were running 7 buses for Woodlands by themselves. And now, you know, the realities of that are different. And those, the adjustments to fleet size can't be made. It's not a nimble and quick process. And once you do reduce, if you do have things that, expansions such as these routes that were recommended by the consultants, the transit study, you don't have the vehicle capacity to be able to serve it.
Monica.
I just want to share, speaking of younger passengers, I have called for help 3 different times in the past year and a half and have been turned down, told that Transit Authority is unable to help me because I am outside of the hours of operation, and that is very frustrating.
Yet another thing we could do with money
Yeah.
is expand our hours, our service hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel bad for the
It
people.
would
who are
be
gonna
great to be able
require-
to serve from 6 to 6. But with those,
Yeah, between 7 and 8 a.m.
So how many buses go out a day?
typically about 6. And that's also constrained by the number of drivers we have.
Yeah, I just think with the economic inflation that everybody's dealing with, that I have a hard time believing this will get passed, because people are struggling right now, and they're just not gonna wanna vote something like this in. And unfortunately, I just think it would be difficult to, you know, put that kind of money towards something that doesn't really have great success at passing, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's the voter's choice. But we ultimately have a fiscal responsibility here.
So as a,
And there will be people that will come back to you for help in other ways when somebody has to buy a $50,000 trans van, you know, with a lift so they can, you know, get their wheelchair around.
so as a board here, are we gonna is this gonna die today, or are we gonna move it forward to a business meeting? somebody get that Jeopardy music going.
If we're gonna give the people a chance to speak.
Yes, that's right, for the public hearing, that's right, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, so it will move forward, and then Matt can schedule or do a public hearing. Would it be right before our business meeting?
We can do it right at the business.
Right at the business meeting?
But let's really work on getting the word out.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll give us more time to do it.
Well, public hearings normally would have their own section on the agenda.
No, but you could still put the thing, because they'll have to vote later on, you could just put it under old business, and then it's not under consent too.
It could be, but it would go under new business, because it technically had not been considered at a regular meeting before, but it could be, that would probably be the route.
But you can figure that out after this meeting.
Yeah. To clarify though, the public hearing.
Yeah, my eyes are all dried
Is
up.
the public hearing on the value of transit to the county? Is the public hearing on the request for funding? I mean, I want to make sure I'm.
Better just be all the above, probably, yep.
Yeah.
Well, these are
Okay, so item is moving forward on the request for funding,
Yes.
and you're holding a public hearing on the request for funding, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Got it.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, brother.
Consideration.
Can I assume that we're gonna,
Motion to adjourn.
there we go, need a second.
Second.
Let's go home.
Whoever you want, Mike.